All right, everybody, just want to take another minute or two to let a couple additional few thousand more people show up. And just for reference, there is a YouTube live stream going on right now as well, so that all of this content will be available on YouTube. All right. All right, I think we're filling up pretty nicely. So we have a couple of folks here. We're just going to say a couple words, and then we're going to jump right into the first presentation. So my name is Ben Watson. I'm the founder and CEO of Hawken Dynamics. We're really lucky to be able to take part in this event. Myself and Drake, who's a member of our team as well. You can see Drake there down below. Really just wanted to extend our thanks to everybody who's joined, everybody who's participating, all of the great companies that have joined us in sponsoring this event, the NSCA, who's helping us a huge amount. This is really just incredible. Should be close to 4,000 plus participants over the next few days. And so just to every one of you who's joined, who's been emailing me, asking questions, like, we appreciate it. You know, we built our company around strength conditioning, so we owe a lot to this community, and everybody's in the same spot right now. So we wanted to try to do something to give back, but this whole thing started from a Twitter interaction with Coach Gildersleeve from Buffalo. So, but it just shows that that's how this thing works. You know, everybody knows one another, and next thing you know, you have a massive event on your hands. So it's pretty cool to see. It's been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of really awesome coaches, a lot of great people throughout this process, and to see the turnout from other companies stepping up is really amazing. We're so grateful for everybody who's participating. And the last thing I'm going to say is just another shout out to please donate when you can. We're going to be putting the link up intermittently throughout this. Please, if you can donate, we would love that. We're trying to get this thing way bigger than our initial goal. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and have Drake's going to say a couple words here, I think, and then we're going to kind of pass the torch over to Jay DeMeo, who's going to do the rest of the hosting of the event. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, I just want to send another thank you to the companies that have joined this cause. We have 26 companies now that have joined on. Each one of their logos is on your display screen right now. We're currently up to, I'm looking at my phone here, almost $45,000 on the GoFundMe. This is about $15,000 over our initial goal of 30,000. So that's pretty awesome. We're still taking companies if they want to join. If you know any companies, it's all the way through the end of this thing. So if you guys know anyone or you guys want to make a donation, feel free to reach out. All right, Eric, if you want to take it from here.
Am I on there?
Yeah,
hey, everybody. From the NSCA, I just want to thank everyone here supporting, participating in this event, Coaches vs. COVID-19. This is obviously a great cause that is affecting everyone right now. You know, I've been so encouraged by the call to action in our field, in the strength and conditioning community, with all these webinars, home workouts, virtual events like this. You know, it's such a challenging time. We're being tested. And I feel like our strength community is really stepping up. I'm just so proud of to be a part of this event, and just to be a part of what we're doing to combat COVID-19 as a strength community. And, you know, with that said, you know, special thanks to all the event organizers, the sponsors, everybody who contributed to this. I'm honored that the NSCA has taken part in this, and I'm just really proud to be a part of it. So, you know, with that said, I just want to turn it over to you guys, and you know, and hope everyone enjoys this event.
Thank you, Eric. All right, Jay, turn it over to you here.
All right, well, guys, first and foremost, thank you to everybody who's here with us on a Friday. This is really, really awesome, and a huge thanks, you know, obviously to Ben and Drake and everyone involved in putting this event together and working so tirelessly on something that really got put together super fast. So cheers to you guys for doing all that. But before we get going, again, thanks for everybody for coming, but let's keep in mind what we're here for, right? The presenters and everyone that's involved, they're volunteering their time, their knowledge, their expertise so that we all can get better, but let's remember what the cause is for. So if you could take whatever it is and just keep helping with the donations, that would be greatly appreciated. And second, guys, please remember the sponsors that have been so generous to help with the entire project and all that's been going on. Eventually, you're going to be able to see them down the road and make sure that you thank them, for all of their involvement and their assistance. And I would be remiss if I don't ask before we start. I'm sure that this being a Friday night, people are ordering pizza or takeout or something. Let's always try to be part of the solution. Let's always try to make sure that we're taking care of everybody, especially your servers in this time. So if you've got people that are coming to bring you dinner or your staff dinner or whatever during this, please take care of them as well. But enough of me, let's get to the meat and potatoes, right? Our first presenter comes from the University of Buffalo. He is the head strength and conditioning coach for football, Matt Gildersleeve. Matt runs the entire performance department out there. He oversees the football's physical preparation, nutrition, and he cares for the fueling station. This was his first season, and the Bulls won 8 games, including their bowl game, beating Charlotte 31-9. And prior to that, Coach Gildersleeve was at Akron for 7 years, and he went all the way from being a GA to the director there. So, Coach Gildersleeve, so excited to hear you talk, man. Can't wait for this. Thank you.
Appreciate the introduction there, Jay. Thank you very much. All right, so as we kind of get into this, make this a smooth transition as possible. Drake, Ben, just let me know. I gotta share my screen here. If you can unblock that. All right. All right, that should be up there. Now no one can see me talking right now, is that correct?
Yeah, we can see you talking, Matt.
Okay. All right, beautiful. Okay, well, guys, what I'm gonna talk about today is as we get into this, and I want to pre-apologize because I got a newborn baby in the house. So at some point during this presentation, there's a really good chance you guys are gonna hear some crying or my wife telling me to stop talking so loud, which is just normalcy right now in the Gildersleeve household. So if that comes up, I do apologize for that. But I'm going to talk about something that's something I really enjoy speaking on, guys, but I'm going to break down acceleration, deceleration, and change of direction, and more specifically the biomechanics of those and how they apply to sports in general. And I'll keep it as general as I can, guys. But before I get there, the first thing that I really want to do is just re-hit that point of, guys, when I sent this tweet out 10 days ago, or maybe it's 11 days ago now, I would have never in a million years guessed that we would have fundraised $45,000, put this speaker lineup together and had all this amount of help. And I just want to truly, truly thank everybody. I think this is the most impressive thing I've ever seen our community do together as far as the strength and conditioning community and industry to be able to fundraise and help. And for those of you that aren't exactly, don't know exactly what specific platform we're donating to, all this money goes to the people that Jay was talking about. So the hourly employees that were laid off, the people that are really hurting through this, the gym owners that can't go in and do what they want to do and earn the salary they want to earn. That's where this money is going to. So before I start today, I would just like to set a goal. I'd like to raise $1,000 by the end of this particular talk. So if you can, Drake, there should be a link out there that if you guys either have it or we can put it in the chat box that you guys can click on. And if it's a penny, if it's $1, if it's $5, whatever you can give, guys, we'd really like you to do that. And as Jay said, let's keep the important thing, okay? All right.
Sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but I did put that link for the GoFundMe in the chat here for people to go look at.
Awesome. Okay, great. So there you guys go. It's in there if you guys can open it and click on it. Okay. So guys, to get started and to get rolling here, like I said, what we're going to talk about today is I'm really going to get into what I consider the laws of change of direction as far as accelerating, decelerating, and changing direction goes, and the mechanics of those movements. Okay. We're going to talk about angles. We're going to talk about force projection, force production, and force absorption, and why those things are so essentially important to movement and to accelerating and decelerating. Okay. And then I'm going to, when you guys leave here, I want you to be able to take some things that you can take home and apply immediately. So I'm going to break down our entire program to you guys and give you guys live drills and show you exactly how we do things and give you a pretty dang good idea of what we do at the University of Buffalo to train these things. Okay. So for those of you who are familiar with Altus and Stu McMillan, this is one of my favorite quotes, and I'll just to summarize at least how I perceive this is obviously in field sports, movement is not necessarily always relatable to track. And I think obviously a lot of things that we do with our athletes as we train them is in our sprint mechanics and those kind of things, obviously the majority of that comes from track. And I think there's a lot of naysayers out there that dismiss teaching mechanics because of our sport. And the whole point of this tweet and why I have this up here is it talks about the rules, or what I consider the laws. There are laws to running. There are laws to changing direction. There's physics and things that go into that can't be necessarily unbroken. They're foundational. Okay, we need to teach our athletes those laws and let them learn how to use them within their sport, whatever sport that may be. So we start with the bare bones of that, of addressing those laws with our athletes. Okay. Now some of you guys, with the bandwidth and how many people are on this right now, I'm not sure how these videos are going to go. I will do my best to be a sideline announcer here if these can't, but this is a video of our running back, Jarrett Patterson. Jarrett's a sophomore. This was his second season in college football. Rushed for 1,800 yards, 961 of them, which were after contact. 5th most in the nation, guys. This is the best change of direction, decelerator, accelerator I've ever had the privilege of coaching. Okay. And, a lot of these laws, as I start to play this and you guys watch Jarrett, okay, when I really started dissecting movement and assessing biomechanics, I think one of the hardest things for me as I started as a strength coach was programming agility. Cone drills never made sense to me. I sat there and I watched and I just thought about our sport and I couldn't think about or make sense of how it made sense to put a cone and tell a kid to run to that cone and then run to here. And then there's no reaction, there's no, and how you could isolate the laws of movement. And so I started studying film. I started studying guys like Barry Sanders and Eddie George and Ray Lewis and guys that I thought were very efficient movers. And I kind of started figuring things out, right? Things I figured out is that upon change of direction, center of mass always did one thing. It always dropped. Right. A guy was changing direction, his center of mass. If he was a proficient mover, his center of mass dropped. Okay. I always started looking at their shin angles. When you looked at really good, efficient movers, their shins were constantly moving in the direction they wanted to go. They were projecting force in the right direction. Jarrett isn't one of the best at that. I'll dive more into those details as we get going. Okay. So we talk about accelerating, decelerating, and changing direction. Those are the main movement biomotor abilities used in the sport of football and obviously in the majority of on-field sports. Okay. And they're used in a multitude of planes. We have linear, forward and backwards. We have lateral, side to side. We have diagonal. We have all these different angles and these different planes that we operate in. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that you need to deliberately practice every potential step that an athlete may or may not take in the game of football or volleyball or soccer, whatever it is you coach. What I am going to tell you is that I absolutely think it is essential that they learn the laws in all those planes and then allow them to figure it out. Teach them the laws so that they can project force in the right direction, absorb it, they can accelerate, they can decelerate, and then let them figure it out. Okay. So one of the big things we'll talk about throughout this presentation is by having proper biomechanical production of force, projection of force, and absorption of force, you're going to make your athletes as explosive and efficient as they could possibly be. Okay. And not to mention the other thing, which I won't dive too much into today, but also how much that can help decrease the risk of injury. Okay. So a lot of these drills are very simplistic that we'll go through. Right. And what I've heard a lot of coaches that I've talked about this, or like I said, some people on the opposition is, you spend too much time teaching these angles or these fundamentals or these laws. We don't need those at the big time or at the bigger schools. Our athletes just get it. Well, I would completely disagree. The more explosive athletes you have, the more force is being developed, the more force is being produced. If that force isn't able to be absorbed, that's when we have all the non-contact injuries and issues that we run into in sports. And to me, the more explosive and powerful an athlete is, the better their biomechanics better be from a standpoint of actually being able to utilize that force and being able to absorb it. So for those of you that have seen this picture before, this is RG3, right? Robert Griffin. And this is his broad jump from the NFL Combine. This was a record jump, right? So the amount of force being produced is ridiculous here, right? Absolute great force production. But look how he absorbs the force. That becomes the issue. Watch it, you have the valgus knee bend. That's his modality of absorbing force, okay? Obviously, as we know, RG3 has been riddled with knee injuries throughout his NFL career and really has sidelined it completely. Okay, just a small viewpoint on that, okay? So this is really the big thing that I want to hit, okay? Understanding that force production is great. And we spend so much time working on force projection, whether it be in the weight room, on the field. We always talk about force production. Okay. We want to become better force producers, produce more force, more. Okay. And when the thing I want you to understand, if that force is not able to be produced in the correct direction, it is absolutely worthless, right? If while Jarrett is changing direction, if he can't produce all the force that he can produce here, if he can't produce it in the right direction, what good is that force? What good is that heavy back squat? What good is all that explosive power that we possess? And my answer is it's not good. Okay. So in this projection, it's why angles are so essential in accelerating and decelerating and changing direction. Okay. I want you to just look at this quick snapshot, right? Look where Jarrett's shins are pointing. Both of Jarrett's shins are going in the correct direction. Look how low his center of mass is. Okay. Look at the defensive back. Shins are still vertical. Center of mass is high. Do you think he makes this tackle? And I'll give it to you right now. Let me make a guess. No, he doesn't. Okay. Jarrett's long gone. And the reason is because once again, he is abiding by the laws of changing direction, of accelerating, decelerating. Okay. So I'm going to try to break this down as simply as I can into some linear mechanics, into some lateral mechanics, accelerative, decelerative, and change of direction. So these are our linear acceleration mechanic drills, okay? So the first thing we have is the linear power line, which, probably I would imagine 95% of the people listening have heard of, have seen, have done, okay? A very simplistic drill, but our philosophy is that we want to go from the most stable to the most unstable. And there's not much more stable than a wall in front of you with your hands on it and a floor that's not going anywhere. Okay. So as we teach this, as we introduce this to our guys that are just getting on campus, the first thing we're always going to talk about is the shin angle. Okay. Understand this. If you take one thing from this presentation, please take this. Your shins are your steering wheel. Your body is going to go where your shins point. Just like when you drive a car, if you turn the wheel left, the car is going left. Okay. This is exact same thing as with shin angles. If your shins are pointed left, that's the direction you're going. They are your steering wheel. That's the best thing to isolate and look at as far as changing direction, to see if you have a proficient guy or athlete of changing direction or you don't. Okay. Shins are absolutely essential. They're your steering wheel. Okay. 45-degree angle. That's this projection angle we constantly talk about, right? Is 45 degrees, right? I want to hit you guys with this too, is it depends. And I'll get into this a lot too, is we constantly talk about 45, 45, 45, 45. Well, guys, there's a lot of variability to that. Okay. Maybe it's 35. There are some very elite sprinters out there that can pull that off. Okay. But most likely it's probably closer to like say 65. Okay. And that depends on a lot of things. Mobility, strength. Do you have strength? Can you possess those angles? If you can't possess those angles, you don't have a chance. If you come out too low and you project at too low of an angle, all that's going to happen is you're going to see that side-to-side motion or that stumble out of the block. That's how you know an athlete is coming out too low. Okay, he's trying to lean, and I'll hit that here in a minute as well. So 45 degrees, yeah, it's optimal. Is it necessarily realistic for all of your athletes? Probably not. Okay, so maybe that's something to reevaluate as well. Obviously, in this linear power line, we're talking about more horizontal force. So we are talking about projecting back and down. Right? We want to project force back and down this way, right? And then we talk about, from there, we talk about dorsiflexion, okay? As you go through and understand, and this is, once again, a whole nother topic, but guys, there's 26 bones in the ankle and the foot right here, 33 ligaments, 107 ligaments, 33 joints. right? So that's pretty important. We can dissipate and or project a lot of force from that, produce a lot of force from that. So rigid ankles, rigid feet, we work on that all the time, but we always want to be dorsiflex for this bottom foot, okay? We talk about neutralize, we talk about really good posture here, and then we talk about a low heel recovery, okay? If this knee and this shin, and we talk about projecting force, if I overdrive this knee and this knee is up here and I bring this thigh way up top here, what is my shin angle going to be? It's going to look more like this, right? So when I go to strike the ground, which way am I striking? I'm striking down. How am I going to strike back? If I want to go this way, can't do it if I'm pushing down this way, okay? So we talk about just projecting force. That's why this is kind of our key piece there, all right? So I just hit this, but when you please, again, this is Dr. Ken Clark. If you guys don't follow this guy on Twitter, please do. Okay, he's a guy that puts out a lot of really good things, a lot of really good studies to a mass model. Those kind of things are very worthwhile looking at. Okay, but when you coach an athlete to lean or to run low, this is what's going to happen. Center of mass is going to shoot this way. Okay, and these steps are going to go side to side, and he's going to start stumbling. Right. Instead, what we want to do is we want to coach our athletes to project. Okay? You will never hear us at Buffalo say, lean, run low. Not going to happen. We're going to coach athletes to project, back and down, put pressure in the ground, back and down. Okay? Those are our coaching cues. And typically when you do that, you get these nice, pretty starts that we want, right? Full extension all the way from the ankle up through the top of the head there. And we don't get a lot of this curve, stumble, bumble. We can avoid that simply by just using a different cue. Okay, so as we go through this, once again, people think a lot of this stuff is elementary, and I get that. That's fine. Okay, different things work for different people, but I'm telling you this right now: sexy isn't always better, right? We spend time teaching our athletes how to project in the right direction, and that way, when we do develop force and we get all those things, it's just it's nonstop as far as results that we get from it because we have good ingrainment of those movement patterns. Okay, so the first thing, our first easy typical progression that we'll do, okay, is as stable as you can possibly imagine. 2 feet in the ground, 2 hands on the wall. The wall ain't going anywhere. This is about as stable as you can get. We're just trying to teach them how to understand that force, right? And when you do this correctly and you get into a good extended position here, you'll understand and you'll feel that force immediately, where here, I feel like I'm resting against the wall. Here, I feel like I'm about to push the wall over. And that's something that they can start to feel. It creates awareness. I think you can coach an athlete as much as you want to coach them, but until they truly can feel and you create that self-awareness of what they're doing incorrectly, they won't fix it. Okay. So we'll shift there. Now we'll make it a little bit more unstable. Now we're going into into a single leg. Okay. So I'm bringing this leg up, make it a little bit more unstable. And we're just ISO holding that position, teaching what we want this shin angle to be, teaching the rigidity of this ankle foot calf soleus complex here, teaching posture, making sure hips are through, working through all those things. Okay. We go to the single leg switch next. So a little more unstable. Switching 1 at a time, right? You make it a little more unstable by going 2 at a time. Okay. So now it's 1, 2. One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So we're getting a little more unstable. Now, obviously, that environment is becoming harder to maintain that posture. And anyone who's ever coached these before knows that as you go down from singles to doubles to triples, guys' postures start curvature. You get that curve in the thoracic spine. You start getting force projecting in the wrong direction. Okay, and then the last step of our progression on the wall is just rapid fire. Okay, now you have to be able to maintain that posture while constantly driving force back and down, back and down, back and down. Okay, so how I like to think about this, guys, is we do this strategically. We go from the wall to a prowler. Why? Because to us, we coach it, hey, this prowler is the wall. It just moves now. Okay, so nothing changes. The biggest thing I see is when people go to a prowler march, all of a sudden my posture is gone. Okay, my projection is gone, and I start taking these short little choppy steps. Guys, nothing changes when we go from wall to prowler, except for this. You see these arms right here. That is the only thing we will change. We will teach them to load and set their scaps. And just so we can get a better shape, I like this shape better. Long arms, I think it just from the lever disadvantage, it's very hard to maintain this angle. Okay, nothing changes with this technique. It's the exact same. We're still punching back and down, back and down, back and down. Okay, so as we progress this, we'll start off with a true march. Then we'll shift into a bound where we're really working a powerful extension step, and then into a quote unquote sprint. But more or less, it's always staying accelerative. So those legs are long. We're never getting in that piston like act, or we're never getting that cyclical like action. It's staying piston type. We're pushing back. We're constantly driving back and down, back and down, back and down, trying to get them as used as we can to, now, like I said, that wall is moving, push the wall. Okay, and from there, we'll progress to sleds. So now we have to use the arms. We're utilizing arms. So we'll go sled march. We'll bring it back down. And guys, the biggest thing that a sled does, and this is what at least as far as heavy sleds, when we load sleds, it allows me to replicate the acceleration phase over and over and over again. Whereas if I were doing a full out sprint, I might get 3 to 4 probably 3 true accelerative steps before I start working into that upright and start working into that phase of sprinting. With a heavy sled sprint, I can go 20 straight yards of just practicing and neurologically ingraining those accelerative steps, those big, long, powerful piston-like steps. And that's, to me, the biggest benefit of this is we can isolate that phase of running. Okay, so we start off with the march, we shift to sled bounds, and then we work into sled sprints. Now we work 60 to 80% of body weight. And if I didn't hit the weight on these, it's about the same, guys. So we're going to weight these, but we're looking for shapes on the prowlers. If a guy can't get in a good shape, we lighten the weight. If he needs more load to get into that good shape, we put weight on. I'd say prowlers are less a calculation and more an eye. You have to watch, you have to look at the athlete doing the drill, but you're looking for a shape. You're looking for that same shape we had on the wall, minus the arms. Okay, but this is the shape that I'm looking for. And if they can't keep that shape each step, you need to lighten the weight. But typically for our big boys, we have prowlers, and we'll put 2.5 plates on each arm there. Right, the skills will typically have 2 plates on each arm. So once again, that's more so, but this guy's pretty much 60, 80 is all the time. Now, if you get too light on these sled sprints, obviously as momentum rises, so will the athlete as they create momentum. So if the weight is too light, they'll end up getting upright, which is what we don't want. We don't want to be sprinting upright with a 50% body weight load attached behind us. Okay. So the biggest thing is when you see that upright running, if it is a guy who really understands the drill, you just add weight and it'll bring him right back down. Right. Now, the other thing you have to watch out for here is your projection angle. So especially on the prowler, what you'll see is guys will get way too low, and they'll, let's say, come out at a 30 to 35 degree projection angle, a 40 degree projection angle. And you have to know your athletes to know, okay, you're practicing a projection angle that is not realistic to you. When we go to sprinting, you're not going to be able to replicate that projection angle. So make sure as you're going through, whether it be these prowlers or these sleds, you get your athletes in a realistic projection angle that when you transfer to sprinting, it's going to transfer, or else they're just going to lean and fall right on their face, which is the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay. And the last thing we have is the med ball. So this is just getting it very dynamic. We take the landing out. So now we're just working on different variations of letting them practice how to project. So understand what a dynamic projection feels like. Get those angles. Those are your steering wheel. Project with full extension. Slam the ball as hard as you can into that wall. Don't worry about the second step. Okay, now this is the same thing I'll tell you guys is you have to watch projection angles. All 3 of these guys I was sitting there screaming at because they're projecting too low. If they came out that low in a sprint, they would fall right on their face, which is what they're doing. So you certainly have to coach this. As you're going through this, you can't just sit there and let them throw the ball and let them land on their bellies. You got to coach the heck out of them and make sure that as they're projecting, they have realistic projection angles that are going to transfer to their sport. Okay, so just to go back through and see that progression all together, right? We have the wall progression. The wall now moves. We go to the prowler progression. Then we get the arm action going. Now we're working sled progression, dynamic nature of med ball progression, and sprinting. Now understand this. It doesn't mean we're not sprinting this entire time, right? If we need to work on projection angles, okay, we're just going to work on that for the wall progression until we got it. But we're still going to sprint with it. We're always going to sprint, okay? The prowler progression doesn't mean we're not sprinting. We're sprinting with it. The sled, the whole time, guys, it's just what I would say is by the time you master these 4 things, if you really have proficient athletes, they are neurologically ingrained and they are ready to sprint and they are ready to project in that angle. And that's the biggest thing that I can tell you guys. But you got to keep sprinting. You can't just say, oh, until we master the wall progression, we're not going to run. Can't do it. Okay. Can't do it. But while you're, for us, we have a projection drill every time we sprint. whether that be on max velocity days, more of a vertical projection, or whether it be on horizontal vector days where it's more of an accelerative projection. We have a projection drill, and this is just how we progress those drills. Okay, so getting into change direction now. All right, we break this into 3 different phases. Okay, phase 1 is change of direction fundamentals, or what we talk about the laws. Okay, this is always going to typically happen in our first phase of the year, which is our neurological ingrainment phase. We're trying to ingrain great motor patterns, so we're trying to ingrain the laws of change of direction. Take those laws, teach them those laws, ingrain those laws. Step 1. Step 2, now we're going to teach them and put them into games, into competitive mode. It's not quite football yet, but it's competitive drills where I am reacting off another human being. And then we're going to sit there and we're going to assess. Do you still possess those laws? Or as soon as we get you into a competitive mode, do those laws just run out the door? Okay. And if so, then what does that tell us? Well, we need to go back to phase 1. We need to hit those laws again. Okay. Or if we get to phase 2 and we sit there and we go, man, shin angles are great. Center of mass is great. We're changing direction very efficiently. Fantastic. Then guess what? We're ready for phase number 3 is football. Okay. And I'm just going to say this to you guys. This was the problem as I came to this conclusion, right? It was I sat there and I thought about making cone drills, agility drills. And what did I do? Man, I got to make these specific to football. I got to make these specific to my sport. What is more specific to your sport than going out and playing football? And the answer is absolutely nothing. Okay. All you do when you create cone drills is you try to mimic and isolate pieces of those drills. Okay. Here, we're isolating the laws. We're opening it up a little bit to reactivity. We're giving them a controlled space, a controlled environment, right? And then we're cutting them loose and letting them play football. So our phase 3 is just that, right? And so that's what we're assessing every time. Teach them the laws. Can they maintain the laws while in this phase 2 of a closed kind of box change of direction? And then when we go to cut it loose, can they still maintain those now in the game of football? And when you do this, when you get to phase 3 and they can do that and they can abide by those laws, you start seeing guys become much, much better football players, and you see them be able to produce the force that you gave them in the weight room, that they earned in the weight room. You really see them be able to transfer that from there to the field. Okay, so here's phase 1, acceleration, deceleration, change of direction. Some of these videos might take a minute to load, so hang in there. Okay, so this is just a single leg triple stick, right? So we're just working 1 yard into a stick. Center mass has got to drop. I have to take a big momentum step forward. All of these are compact. So these are just, this is fundamental. This is phase 1, right? So center mass has got to drop. Okay, now we're going 5 yards, making it a little bit more unstable, right? As we do these linear mechanics, you have got to coach a big step, just like you would on a broad jump. Okay, watch this step in front of you. Big step, momentum sinks into the stick. Momentum sinks into the stick. Okay, that is absolutely essential, guys. If you stick your foot underneath your center of mass while you're trying to change direction, you will fall flat on your face. Okay, like I said, just like a broad jump, when you jump, your shin angles, if you're jumping this way, you have to land with those shins here and let momentum carry you into that stick. Okay, just like if you see a basketball player going down he steals the ball, he's driving, he's dribbling down the court full speed. Okay, he is sprinting this way down the court. And he's got to go from having all that horizontal vectored force and change it to vertical vector like that. Okay. If he just goes from here and all of a sudden tries to jump, he's going through the freaking scoreboard. Okay. What does he have to do? He's got to shift his angles. He's got to shift the angles. He's got to work them vertical. So you see him sprinting, his shins are going this way. And then all of a sudden they go like this, right? They're almost reversed. And then he momentumly sits into that stick, jumps, dunks the ball, right? It's the same concept, guys. You have to have that big momentous stick. Okay. Here's a diagonal now, right? So we work a little bit different projection angles here. Okay. So that big stick still comes. Now I'm pushing diagonally out of it. Big stick, out of the drill. Okay. Now here it is, rapid fire no stick. Now this is one of the biggest things, guys, as I started really breaking down and assessing biomechanics. The best movers in the world are a one-time change of direction guy. And what I mean by that is you don't want to be a 1-2 change of direction guy. Okay. As you attack this cone, you know where you're going. It can't be a 2-step process, meaning, oh, I'm starting. Okay. Now it's time to start again. I stop at the cone. Oh, now it's time to start again. It has to be a simultaneous movement of, as I'm decelerating, my shin is already moving in that next direction and accelerating at the same time. It's got to be a 1-step process. It's got to be start, stop, It's got to be all one movement. It can't be, oh, okay, I stopped. That's great. Got this figured out. Now let me start and go the opposite direction. Any efficient movement, any efficient mover is going to be able to do this in a one-step process. Okay, now we got single leg reactive stick drill. So now there is a coach in front of you. You are sprinting and attacking that coach. Okay, on his clap, you are stopping and sticking. Once again, if these videos are choppy right now, guys, I'm sorry. I'll keep on trying to MC this the best I can. So you're attacking this coach. He claps, and on the reactive stick, you stick it. Okay, and then we can go 45 degrees. So now you're attacking this coach. And when he points a direction, you're going to stick your foot in the ground and cut 45 degrees. So now we're just trying to make this slightly more reactive. We're trying to make it slightly more uncontrollable, just like we talked about on the wall. Okay, so as we go through linear accel, decel, biomechanics, our main coaching cues. Number one is you've got to coach that big step. Can't be afraid to coach it. You have to allow momentum to carry you into that stick. Have to. Okay, got to have a low center of gravity. Chest has got to be over your toes. Right? Without those three things, we are not going to decelerate the force that we are creating. We create great force producers. Can we create great force absorbers? And that is the more essential thing when it comes to injury prevention as well. Okay. So the way that works, right? We have compact sticks, we have rapid fire, and then we go reactive. So it goes from most controllable, right? Compact, to a little more uncontrollable, to the most uncontrollable in this phase one before we hit the phase two. And all we're looking at, right, is as I assess guys, is this is what everyone always asks me. They hate this question. They hate this answer. Okay. They say, how long do you go? Right. Well, there's no timeline. I'm not a timeline guy. I'm not a timeline coach. I'm a result-based coach. Right. That's what we do here at Buffalo is, so we look at our guys, well, when they can abide and live by these laws of change of direction in the compact sticks, guess what? We're ready for rapid fire. And when we go rapid fire and they can abide by these laws, we're ready for reactive. And then when we get to reactive and they can do that, then we're ready for phase two. And that's how we work. There is no timeline. Could be 2 days, could be 2 months. It just depends on how much time they need to neurally ingrain these movement patterns. Okay. So now focusing more on the lateral accel, decel change of direction. Okay. And our teaching progression in that. Right. Okay. Once again, you guys saw this picture, but you look at Jarrett and here's the must, right? Center mass is always low. Shins are always pointing the direction he wants to go. You see that every time this kid makes a cut. That's how we coach this, right? So shins are pointing the direction we want to go. Shin angle, that's our steering wheel. Which direction is Jarrett going right now? He's going this way. These are his steering wheels. It's impossible for him to go this direction right now. It ain't going to freaking happen, okay? The way his shins are going is the direction he's going to go, right? Okay, center mass has got to drop. Can't change direction without it. Got to drop your center mass. Mainly horizontal force. So understand and try to listen carefully to this. You still have to push back and down. And I don't mean back this way, back here. I mean back and down, just like you did when you want to go this direction. I have to produce a ton of force back this way. Jared's got to produce force back this way, where you see these pellets can't get back that way, back that way. That is what is going to help project force in the correct direction. So our drills, acceleration, deceleration, change of direction. Okay, so just like we did on the linear, we're going to start with compact drills. This is 5-yard shuffle. So I'm going to start in my position. I'm going to shuffle 5 yards and stick. Okay, now what I'm looking for here is same thing. Okay, now this is average at best, right? But that's what I am. I'm an average athlete. I do apologize for that. Okay, so I'm going to look for shin angle. I want this shin to try to match this shin as possible. Center mass has got to be low. That's pretty solid. That's not bad. Okay, but this shin needs to be pointed out slightly. Okay, that's a lot better. I could still load this a little bit out here, okay, but that's better. So we're sticking these positions, and this is where you have to take your time and coach your athletes, because I'm telling you, this will be a train wreck when you do this the first time. You will absolutely be mind blown how many guys' knee is valgused in 6 inches and their knees are damn near touching, okay? And then you might go, man, there's something to that. Maybe we should be doing this, okay? So that's the first thing, is make sure that as you're going through this, you're coaching it, you're teaching it. Okay. Now this is rapid fire. So I shuffle, flip right back into it. Okay. Now let's see if I pause that, how I did, right? So we go through this, shuffle. Okay. Not bad. Shins are my steering wheel. They're pointing pretty solid direction. My hips are down. Okay. I'm in a pretty good position to change direction here. getting better at loading that shin out. It's a better rep because I have better shins. Crazy how that works, right? Okay, now we just make it a little more unstable by going a sprint to a lateral decel. So now I'm going to be adding speed to the drill, right? I'm going to be able to sprint faster than I can shuffle. So now it's 5 yard sprint into a lateral decel, right? Out of it. Stick it at the end. Okay, now we go shuffle to sprint. This is a Tommy Moffitt special here. This is one of the drills I stole from him back in 2012 down at LSU. Okay, a 5 yard shuffle into a sprint into a stick. Okay, so now I'm higher velocities, right? I'm achieving greater speeds, which means I need to produce greater force when I go to absorb and decelerate. Okay, now it's rapid fire. So I'm shuffling, sprinting, and it's right in, right out. Get out. Right, and every time we go through this, what am I doing? I'm assessing the laws. Okay, for the majority of our team, how are their hips? How are their shins? Okay, as we get this from compact to rapid fire to reactive, are things going mayhem and their shins are starting to change positions, or are they able to ingrain these laws in their movement? Okay, so now it's reactive. So now I'm going to attack, and this is Coach Heiss right here. I'm going to attack Coach Heiss, and as I come down here, he's going to point a direction. When he points that direction, I'm going to now go from being completely pushing, like I said, horizontally, right, and have to shift into a lateral push here. So I sprint, my eyes are on him, boom, I got to go. Okay, I'm watching these shins. On the reaction now, what are the shins doing? Okay, so as we go through that progression, remember what your coaching cues are. Low center of gravity. Center of gravity's got to be low, right? You have to project back and down. Teach your athletes where to project. Don't teach lean, don't teach low, okay? Just teach them to project in the right direction, and everything else will fit where it needs to fit, right? Remember, your shins are your steering wheel. It's absolutely essential. Guys, if you don't believe me, just please open up YouTube, pick up your sport, and go watch the best movers move. Just do that. That's like I said, that's how this was created. That's how this progression was created. That's how this worked in my mind when I really wanted to understand movements. I just went and watched the most proficient movers in the world do it, and I picked up these laws from them. I certainly didn't create these laws. They did. They taught us how to do this, right? So now let's return the favor. But shins, remember, they got to be efficient. They got to be pointing in the right direction, right? And then we have to put substantial force in the ground. We know, that's the one thing I add that for a reason, is I don't want people to leave this being like, oh man, we don't need to do anything in the weight room anymore. Force production is worthless. Okay, all you need to do, if you can project force, you're great. No, you still need to be able to produce a ton of force to be successful in any sport. If you can't do that, you're lost, right? But it's got to be synonymous. They have to go hand in hand. Not only, whatever you can produce, you better be able to project. And if you can, it's wasting. It just is. You're creating an inefficient athlete and you're wasting force. Okay. So yes, it does require a ton of force to decelerate, to absorb, and to accelerate. That is 100% true, right? But projection is just as important. And that is my whole point here is you look at your program, how much of it do you spend practicing production? How much of it do you spend practicing projection? How often skewed are those numbers? Just look at it, just assess it, just think about it, okay? So remember our phase 1 progression, compound sticks, right? Or compact sticks, rapid fire, and then reactive, same thing, same timetable. It's not a time, it's not a couple of weeks, it's result based. How do they look during the compact? Do they own the laws? Great, move them. Okay, going into phase 2. Okay, now phase 2, this is something that I've been talking with my buddy Cam Joss about for a very long time, right? And these are chase games. And I took this slide directly from Cam. So Cam, shout out to you. Thank you for letting me borrow this, more like steal it, but I did tell you I was going to steal it. So I don't think that counts as stealing, okay? So going from there, this is a lot of things. There's a bunch of ways we can do this. We can read, react, and chase, right? We can talk about pattern recognition. But the main thing that I want you guys to think about is as you go into these competitive games, we're getting closer to the game of football. Okay, we're not nearly playing football yet, but we're getting closer, a lot closer than the drills we taught you in phase 1 or we just went through. I think we can all agree on that. Okay, but the question is now when we go from ingraining those laws, if they're truly ingrained, what's going to happen? I'm going to be able to see them here. So you can't just get to these games. And this is one thing I struggle with sometimes is the kids love them. They have so much fun doing them. It becomes a very hectic competitive environment sometimes, which is what we want. But you can't get so enthralled in that environment that you stop coaching. you have to continue to dissect and analyze biomechanics and look and say, are they still abiding by the laws? Because if not, if it doesn't transfer to that, it is not going to transfer to football. And you're still going to have those guys missing tackles because they're not projecting force in the right direction. And they're getting beat to the spot. Okay. So throughout that video is just some ideas. Now, this is probably the main one that we do. Now we spend, I'd say probably about a third of the year in each one of these phases. If I had to just, give you guys a quick timetable, it's probably about 33% in each one of these, right? But capture the towel has been a big game that our kids love that we play. And there's so much variation you can put to it. So we can play capture the towel in a 5-yard square box, a 10-yard square box, and a 20-yard square box. And sorry I don't have videos for you guys, but obviously this coronavirus thing, I didn't have athletes just laying around to help me demo some things. And my 2 assistants, Coach Heiss and Coach McNally, would have killed me had I made them go out to the field and play a couple of these games and put them on in front of 1,558 people currently. So they can thank me for this later. All right. But so we can play this, like I said, in a more controlled environment, in a little bit less controlled environment, a higher velocity environment, or the highest velocity, which is that 20-yard square box, which is a big box. Okay. So we can play with 2 athletes, play with 4 athletes, and play with 6 athletes. Really, the 3 main games that we'll play is cat and mouse, right? So that's just one-on-one. I have the towel, you don't. Your job is to try to get the towel from me. Okay. It's not a hand battle. It's a movement battle. So guys can't stiff arm. They can't do any of those. They can use their arms for movement only. And the other guy's trying to get the towel. We'll put, say, 6 seconds on the clock and it'll be go. We'll start them 3 yards apart from each other. And then it's just, can you get it? The guy who gets the towel wins. The guy who doesn't loses. Okay. Or we can play last man standing. We put 4 guys or 6 guys in a box, right? Now you're adding more stimulus. There's more guys in the box. Everybody has a towel. So now not only do I got to worry about my towel and protecting my towel, but I got to worry about the guy to my left and the guy to my right and the 2 guys in front of me. Okay. So now there's more stimulus. We're getting closer to football. If that makes sense. Closer to our team sport, right? And then really the last thing we'll do is we'll add obstacles, right? Referees, field goal post, I don't know, right? So we'll put things in there like trash cans. We'll put trash cans just periodically through a 20-yard box. So now you got to watch out for the other 5 guys trying to take your towel. You got to try to take their towel, and you got to watch out for that trash can to your right and 5 yards forward. Okay, so we're just adding stimulus, trying to make this as close to real football as we can possibly get it. Okay, so I just want to give a shout out. I did steal Cam's slide there, so I figured I should at least do this for probably copyright infringements. These are incredible books, guys. And for those of you guys that don't know Fergus Connolly and Cam, both very brilliant minds. Cam is a very close friend of mine. And he's a guy that has helped me, I want to say, organize my philosophy. We've spent many hours on the phone talking programming and he's really been a guy I've leaned on heavily to sit there and listen to all my crazy thoughts throughout the year. So Cam, thank you very much for that. But both these books, guys, I absolutely recommend. And if you're looking for more resources on necessarily why to play games, how to play games, and different ideas and ideologies of programming them into your program yearly, these are great resources. I recommend you hop on Amazon and order them right now. Okay, so finally, phase 3. It's what I said, guys. It's 7-on-7. It's captain's practice, right? So for us personally, what we do, right, is I'm going to take the script that I know we're going to start off camp with. I'm going to take all those indie drills that we're going to start for the first 10 periods of practice with, right? And we're going to do those. And that's how we're going to start. So a few things, right? Now it's actually football. I still am watching. I'm still coaching. I got to make sure that those laws are ingrained. I got to make sure that we're still hitting those laws as we go and shift into phase 3. And so we're still out there and we're looking and we're coaching, right? Those are important things to still be doing. But the best thing about that too, guys, is I think one of the things that contributed most to us not having any soft tissue injuries in camp this past year was the fact that we had repeated those 10 periods of the first 4. Everyone knows the first 4 days of camp are the highest volume of injuries throughout the entire season, right? Well, by us repeating those and them already being so accustomed to those 10 periods, right? They just did it over and over and over and over again. So yes, it helped with us assessing those biomechanics and if they were neurologically ingrained to be able to do those in their live sport. But at the same time, as far as that acute spike that teams normally get going into camp, we didn't really have it because we've been doing it all summer. I think it's wildly valuable. Okay. And then on top of that, we had 7-on-7 twice a week. So you see these kind of 2 things stacking on top of each other to really put the whole picture together with that. So as far as the volume that we'll own in summertime, we won't do true agility drills. Okay. Any hour or any minute I have with them that we can call agility, it's either captain's practice, which is really indie, or 7-on-7. Okay. So just to review, right? We have our 3 laws, or our 3 phases in our progression. Phase 1 is change of direction fundamentals. Ingrain the laws of changing direction. That is our goal there. We want to try to ingrain those movement patterns and make sure that they are locked in, so that when we go to phase 2 and we start the games, we see those transition. We see the laws come with them into that more unpredictable environment, right? And then finally, when we feel like, hey, those laws are being brought over into the more unpredictable environment, let's put them into their sport. Now, do we see it in their sport? When we see them playing 7-on-7, when we see them going through Indy, are those laws of movement, are they still applicable? Are they still performing those laws? Okay, so in conclusion, guys, and then we'll get to some questions here. I see we got a few up there rolling. Okay. Understanding and remembering this, please take this away. If force isn't produced in the correct direction, it's absolutely worthless. Okay. It's twofold: produce, project, produce, project. You have got to produce your force and project it in the correct direction, or else all that hard work we're spending with our guys in the weight room, it's for none, right? So make sure not only are your athletes great force producers, but make sure they're great force projectors as well. Okay. Have a progression. Right? Sexy isn't always better. A lot of this I showed you guys, it wasn't very sexy. And I'm sorry if I disappointed you guys, but to me, simplistic is always how I've operated. I think the mundane, simplistic things in life, when you really hone in on those and own those and master those, that's what's going to project you success, right? So have a progression, and no matter what level you're at, I couldn't disagree more that you could argue that you don't need this. I think every level of an athlete, unless he's just a level 3, a phase 3 mover, he needs to be implementing these in some form or fashion. Okay. And then the biggest mistake, or the biggest takeaway I don't want you guys to take, is that by just doing these drills, you're going to become better movers. Guys, this is tough. You want to talk about attempting to reteach guys these movements and then really truly ingrain them so that when they go to the football field, they actually do them. Okay. I think we've all seen it, right? Where you teach all these beautiful sprint mechanics and then you put a clock on and they go to none, right? Well, they're not ingrained then. So you have to coach. This is something that if you're not a great teacher, I guess don't even try it. Okay. Or if you're not willing to really coach and teach and get your elbows freaking dirty, because this is coaching. Okay, if you want to do this and you really want to implement this in your program, don't just tell me the drills didn't work. Okay, the coach didn't work. You need to go and you need to break your guys down and you need to coach the heck out of them. And if you don't do that, this is no magic pill. This ain't just going to fix things. You got to coach. You got to freaking teach. Okay, and then also just remember, once again, this is probably a whole nother slide or a whole nother, I guess, presentation, but by teaching our athletes to produce and absorb force in a better direction, we can reduce a lot of those non-contact injuries that are just unnecessary, guys. A lot of those, as we know, happens when force is produced or absorbed in the wrong direction or inefficiently, and we're leaking force all over the place. We know that's a thing. So a huge piece of it is that as well. Okay. Guys, I want to take a minute here to once again, for sure, thank, my wife Anna, my newborn Mia. Without them, none of this is possible. Following me around the country and doing this, and the support that I have from home is what allows me to do things like this. And anything that I can give to our strength and conditioning community, it's because of what they give me. So I want to make sure I thank them. Okay, my staff here, Coach McNally, Coach Connor McNally, Coach James Heiss. I just want to make sure they understand how valuable they are to me. Those guys push me to get uncomfortable every single day. They truly live the standard that we set. And these are two incredible coaches, some of the best I've ever been around, some of the best I've seen. Okay. Coach Leipold and our football team, obviously. It's been I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it's been working for this man. One of the best leaders I've ever been around. Okay. And then our kids, you talk about the kids that we have the opportunity to coach every day, man, you don't even go to work. That ain't what it is. Okay. You get the opportunity to go hang out with these guys and do something for them on a daily basis. Our kids are absolutely incredible. Okay. And then, Drake, you and Ben, man, and Hawken Dynamics, I'm telling you guys, you guys killed this. And I want, anybody who's out there, and you need to understand one thing, is that this does not happen without them. They took an idea, and without them, guys, I wouldn't have been able to do this, not to this level. Okay. And those guys, they absolutely killed it. So Ben, thank you, man. Thank you so much. Hawken Dynamics, thank you. And Drake, you did a freaking killer job, man. I know how much work you put in this. So thank you. I appreciate you. Okay. Guys, here's all my contact information, right? There's my email address. If you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, I do my best to try to put some things up. Really, where I do the most of my time with education-wise is all of our staff developments and phone calls. We have a YouTube channel, which we actually just converted to a podcast as well, which is on Spotify and Apple. It's called The Curriculum. It's a great way to keep up with me and kind of what we're doing to develop our staff as well. So, guys, thank you for the opportunity. It's been incredible. And Jay, whatever questions there are, I'm more than happy to answer those now.
All right. Well, Coach, first, I think you're going to be happy to know that your goal was more than doubled. So thank you to everybody in attendance, wherever you are, for continuing along the cause. Coach, one big one that we're seeing a lot of, and selfishly, this was one of the two that I wrote down as well. What are your key checkpoints, and how do you know whether the progression or regression needs to come about?
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a hard thing, Jay, is that it's fluid, right? It's organic in a certain extent, and sometimes it can even be day to day. Just like we know, anybody who has cleans in their program, you can have guys ripping great cleans on Friday, right? You come in on Monday and you hit a light complex, and you're like, who is this team? What happened to my good cleaners? So it's definitely organic and it's definitely fluid. And, I'd say probably over the years, obviously my eye has gotten a lot better for it, but that's what it is. It's what I said. It's coaching and it's teaching. You have to sit there and you have to assess. So what I'm looking at those coaching cues, right? Is a guys, we put them in, are their hips dropping? Are their shin angles where we want them to be? Or do we have inverted shin angles, right? Where one's pointing this way and one's pointing this way, and we lost our beautiful parallel shin angles. Are we extending through the ground? Are we pushing in the right direction? So it's a coaching thing. It's an eyeball thing most of the time. And even, I was talking to a couple of my former employees, Parker Showers, Luke Rose, Chris Gray, very close friend of mine, Matt Clapp, yesterday, and they asked some really good questions about if we ever go back to phase one. And the answer is, yeah, we just, these are great things that you can implement in your warm up, right? Those compact drills, that's not putting a ton of toll on the body. So you can hit those compact drills. Let's say in summertime before a 7-on-7, we might quick hit those compact drills just to re-ingrain those motor patterns to make sure that we're still hitting them in that simplistic form.
I love that, man. That's awesome. Now, Eric Herman also said, Coach Lee for president, thought you should probably know that people are going to vote for you for office. But I think that this is an important a question too, Coach. People ask this in a bunch of different ways. What are the roles during 7-on-7 for you? Other than evaluation, and are you allowed any input into talking with these guys about how they're moving? And then selfishly also, Dave Foreman asked this, and I would actually like to know this too. What are the big guys doing during 7-on-7?
Yeah, so, obviously I understand there's some obviously different restrictions, and obviously, so for us, a lot of that is entrusted into our captains, right? Is we go out there, well, if I'm on the field, there can't be any footballs out there. And there's a lot of NCAA rules and regulations on that as well. So with our team techs, our captain's practices, there are no footballs out there. So we obviously get creative with the things that we're doing. So that's really when I can assess it the most. As far as 7-on-7, it's just we go and we warm them up and then we leave, which is NCAA rules there. So a lot of the 7-on-7 assessments we can't necessarily do, but the nice thing is our last phase of summer, really when we get into 7-on-7s, our conditioning all becomes position specific. So with that conditioning, a receiver is paired up with a DB, right? And I'll call a route. Hey, you're running a dig right. Okay, so I get to sit there and just assess those drills and assess those mechanics that entire time. So that's really when I make up some ground, because we can't be out there for 7-on-7s. And then what was the other question there? You're still muted there, Jay.
What are the big guys doing?
Yeah, what are the big guys doing?
Yeah, so big guys are still, so during captain's practice, they're still on Indy, right? So they have all their Indy drills that they're doing, which is mimicking the first 9-10 periods of what camp or what camp would be for their Indy periods. And then during 7-on-7, they're over and they're doing their one-on-ones and they're doing their drills as well for that.
Awesome. So then another one that we saw quite a few of, how would this cross into multiple sports, say like a soccer athlete or a lacrosse player?
Yeah, and that's where, Jay is once again, those aren't my sports or necessarily what I've worked with. So I guess you could take it with a grain of salt, but the laws are the laws, right, Jay? I mean, that's where I'm saying those laws don't change, and it doesn't matter what now maybe how they break the rules or they kind of use those laws to bend them and work in their sport. Maybe that differs slightly, right? But those laws don't change. I don't care what sport you play. If you're sprinting forward and you don't drop your center of mass, you're falling on your face. I don't care what sport you're playing. If you're sprinting this way and you want to go back this direction, if your shins are still pointing that way when you want to go that way, it ain't happening. So the laws don't change. Now, could you specify this and make your own 3 phases for soccer and for those things? Yeah, absolutely. I think the games are valuable for anybody. I don't think the games are football specific. I don't think capture the towel is football specific. It's just what is your phase 3, right? And to my knowledge of soccer, they have captain's practice. They have those same things. So it's still that concept, Jay, of that progression of going from the most controllable to the most uncontrollable. I'm going to put them in a controlled environment. Can you ingrain those movement patterns? And then do you still have them as you get less and less in a controlled fashion?
Fantastic, dude. Matt, I can't thank you enough, man. This presentation was absolutely awesome. This was great. Thank you, bud.
No, I appreciate you guys and hearing that we dominated that $1,000 goal, guys, man. That's awesome. So don't forget the cause, guys. Speakers, you got a really freaking good one coming up, man. I'm fired up, and I'm gonna get another cup of coffee here for Coach McKeefer. Can't wait for you. So Jay, thank you, man. Awesome job. Appreciate you being out here and helping us out. Everybody watching, please enjoy the next day, the next night, the next weekend, man. This is incredible. Thank you. I'm so blessed for you guys. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know what, Matt, and a big thanks to you for all you've done to put this together.
Been a pleasure. Been an absolute pleasure. Good luck, Coach. Go dominate, baby.
So our next talk, guys, our second presenter of the evening is a really good friend of mine and someone who I'd hope for most of us doesn't need an introduction. He's done more for the field than 99% of the people out here, from driving education through his work with play and, there what seemed to be 100 different seminars that he ran every year, somehow all over the world, almost what seemed every week, to Iron Game Chalk Talk Radio, which is one of the best podcasts that's ever been put out there. To the great books he's put out, Coach Mack has been giving back to the coaching world for years. And, he's made sure that he's done what a lot of us have wanted to do, and that's leave this place better than he found it. And recently, Coach Mack's returned to the college world as the assistant athletic director for sport performance at Fresno State. But enough of me, my friend and one of my mentors, Mr. Ron McKeefer.
Jay, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And Matt, awesome presentation, and just appreciate you allowing me to be a part of this. What an incredible initiative, and what an incredible blessing that we have the ability to kind of come together as strength coaches all around the world to really take advantage of the time that we do have to learn from one another. I mean, so many times we spend so much time working in the business instead of on the business that it's you got to find the blessing in this. I mean, every one of us would much rather be working with our athletes right now, but nonetheless, this is a blessing. So I'm going to share my screen. Jay, if you can just kind of give me a thumbs up, make sure that it's working here as I go. But Matt asked me, and he asked me to talk a little bit about, kind of the book and, the essential components to be a successful strength coach. And, I was pretty much, as a young professional, I was pretty much obsessed with being a success. I became a head strength coach at 22 years old in NFL Europe and 23 years old at South Florida. And I had to grow up really, really fast in the profession, and I wanted to be one of the greats. That was my goal. I wanted to be, at the conference and be the person that everybody came up to, and all those types of things. And that drove me for much of my early part of my career. But what I've learned is that's, those kind of accolades and those types of things that come with that, it really isn't what matters. And as I've gone on in my career, and for somehow, some way, I'm now the old guy in the profession. Blink of an eye, and I was just starting. But now I think I've really boiled it down to this equation that I found in a book. It's this T plus M plus E equals success. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm going to use my journey mostly as an example of what not to do, but also provide some recommendations of things that I think you should do if you're going to go and attack this profession. So I'm going to dig into this. I rarely start a presentation these days without kind of going to this picture. This is Northeast High School. It's in inner city Kansas City. It's where I grew up, single parent, 5 kids. Dad was Vietnam vet, came back with a Purple Heart, but also a drug and alcohol problem. And, we pretty much grew up in and out of our lives, but we grew up pretty poor. We grew up in a rough time part of town. And in the right-hand corner here, kind of off to the right-hand of the screen, that was the middle school. And then just kind of to the right of that was the elementary school. And so I grew up in a time where we didn't have a whole lot of money where we could play sports. And I would walk kind of to the right of the screen and up towards the top of the screen and to where the very top of the screen is where my house was. And that day it was on a busy street, and that day there was a drug deal going bad, and I didn't quite feel comfortable going that way. So I went towards this high school, towards this track, and I turned up that street towards the right of the track, towards the end zone of that track. And when you're 8 years old and you walk a different direction, I mean, you might as well be walking in a different country. I mean, you might as well be walking in a different state, and it was completely new to me. And I had never seen this field before. And at the field was a football practice going on, and I was captivated. I mean, I was blown away by the symphony of it all, the screaming, the effort, the collisions. And so not having any boundaries, I walked right down the middle of the field, right during a play, and guys were dodging me, to not hit me. And one of the coaches came up to me and grabbed me by the hand, and he walked me to the sideline. I'm sure I was upset. I hadn't gone that way. I was upset by what I saw. And instead of kicking me off the field like a lot of us would do if we just saw some kid walking on our field, he walked me to the sideline and let me watch practice. And about halfway through that, he got the quarterback's attention and had the quarterback throw me the ball, showed me how to make a diamond with my hands, and threw the ball from what seemed like a mile from midfield towards the sideline. And that ball went right through my hands and hit me in the nose and bloodied my nose. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I mean, from that moment on, I wanted to be that quarterback. And it kind of led me down this path of ultimately becoming a coach. And so it took me, I was 8 years old then. It took me until I was about 13 years old to be able to play organized football. I played youth football as an 8th grader, went to high school, ended up being a self-made kind of quarterback that ended up going to Ottawa University as a player. I stayed on it. I coached for a year there, went from there to the Kansas City Royals, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to the Berlin Thunder, NFL Europe, to University of South Florida as a head strength coach. Spent 10 years there, went to Army Special Forces, University of Tennessee, the Cincinnati Bengals, Eastern Michigan, worked at Play, where I worked all over the world. And then now I'm here at Fresno State. And I show you all that. I think there's a lot of people that are probably listening that would look at that and say that that's a pretty impressive career and pretty cool places and all those types of things. And I don't tell you that, for pompous reasons. I show you all this because none of this was possible without that coach that one day making a split-second decision of walking me from the middle of the field to the sideline and letting me watch. And so anytime we're in these conferences, anytime we are learning from one another, I always want to remind us that we have a tremendous opportunity to make an impact on athletes' lives every single day. And this could be the smallest decision. That coach, they've never thought about that again. They never thought about that. But that one split-second decision that coach made has allowed me to provide for my family of 4 adopted kids and my wife of 20 years and a career that's gone on for quite some time. And so we all have that type of impact, and I hope that we don't take it for granted. So I talked about this equation, this T plus M plus E, and I read a book, The E-Myth Revisited. It's a business book, and I would encourage you, if you haven't read outside of the discipline of strength and conditioning, I would highly, highly encourage you to do so. And look for motivation and inspiration from other careers that are more well established than strength and conditioning. We're still in our first 100 years of this profession, and so we have a lot to learn still. But in that book, it gave the equation of being a great technician plus being a great manager plus being a great entrepreneur equals being a success. And that made so much sense to me when I broke it down, so much so that I used that template to kind of write my book, The CEO Strength Coach, and use a lot of those examples throughout my own career and others that have attributed to that. So we're going to dig into this equation a little bit today. Hopefully you guys get something out of this, and we'll go from there. So being a technician, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the technical part of strength and conditioning, because we have Matt and the rest of the team at Hawkins Dynamics and Jay and everybody put together an incredible list of practitioners to come on and really dig into the nuances of sets and reps and progressions and regressions and the whole nine. And it's super, super important being a great technical coach. But to me, it's not the only thing. And so we're going to spend a little less time on being a technician, but more time on being a manager and an entrepreneur. So when we do talk as a technician, when I got hired by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I got an interview. It was the middle of winter. I was in Kansas City, very cold. And I wanted nothing more than to be in the NFL as a strength and conditioning coach. And I get a phone interview from what would be a dream job, working with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in sunny Tampa, Florida, the NFL, the whole deal. And super excited. I got ready for the phone interview. I had every single book that I've ever owned, every note from college that I ever took on my desk, and I'm ready for anything. And Mark Asanovich, very first question he asked me is, "You want to be a strength and conditioning coach?" And I said, "Yes, sir," more than anything. He's like, "Okay, well, define strength." And I don't know about you. Take a second and just think about that for yourself. Can you really define it? And it's the most fundamental thing in our profession, is being able to define what you actually do. And I'm pretty sure I gave him the power equation. He flipped over to another phone call. I'm flipping through every book that I had. I'm pretty sure I gave him the power definition, but he had pity on me, hired me anyways. But it taught me a very, very important lesson in my career, that I needed to define every single thing that went into my program. I needed to make sure I understood it completely. And if I didn't, I couldn't describe it and define it, then I didn't use it. And so very early on, I was fortunate. Ken Manny was a mentor from afar. He was one of the few coaches that got back to me when I wrote my 200 plus letters. And he sent me these 10 principles, and out of sheer kind of not knowing what my philosophy was, because that was the second question that Mark asked, was what my philosophy was. I would yield early in my career to saying I was a principle-based strength coach and not a philosophy-based strength coach, because I didn't know what philosophy I was at that time. I did know that I agreed with these principles that I read from Ken Manny, and what I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching now is that those principles have stood the test of time, and allowed me to not be so narrow focused on a specific philosophy. And so for there to be a neuromuscular adaptation, you have to create overload, period. Whether or not I'm talking to Louis Simmons, or I'm talking to Jim Windler, or I'm talking to Joe Ken, or somebody in CrossFit, or somebody in weightlifting, overload is a fundamental principle in all those, and we can have a conversation about it. Now, we may not agree how to get there, but at least we can have a conversation about it. Once you create overload, then obviously you progress. That's sets, that's reps, that's you can manipulate in volume and intensity or distance. You got to have balanced development. As a football strength coach, every time they walk across the sideline, they expose their entire body to injury. So I have an obligation to prepare them for the rigors of competition. Perfect technique, we have 8 hours. And so if they're not doing it the right way, then that may be the only exercise that we have in the program for that specific movement pattern. and I'm setting them up for injury if I don't hold them accountable to doing it the right way. Variety is a spice of life. You have to incorporate variety. I'd much rather have an athlete say, "Oh man, what's Coach Matt got for me today?" rather than, "Oh man, we got to do that again." Right? Supervision. The root word of the coach, the coach means to take somebody on a journey. And, bottom line is that we can help people get further than what they can get themselves. And so I take that very serious, and I want to make sure that we are providing adequate or appropriate supervision. Principal reversibility, you have to train every 96 hours. There starts to be a detraining effect. And so that's something that I talk to quite a bit with our coaches, that, look, we're always going to train. Now we might manipulate that volume, but we're always going to train. Specificity, I don't do things because they look like it. I do things because of the proper energy systems, the proper joint actions, the proper to prepare for injuries that are specific to that sport. And then you can't drop them in the grease every single day. You got to have a plan, and that's variegated and manipulated throughout time. For periodization, and then evaluation, you got to be able to do. You got to be able to defend what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that you're getting the results that you want. And so I really love this this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson: "As to methods, there may be a million and then some, but principles are few. The man who grasps principles can successfully select his own methods. The man who selects methods ignoring principles is sure to have trouble." And that's something that has really stuck with me my entire career. I literally pull this slide out every time I design a program, and make sure that I'm accounting for all these things as I design it. Sharpening the sword, you have to make sure you're challenging yourself, and so things like clinics are great, manuals, site visits, all those types of things. You have to get out. And, it's one thing to understand things from 40,000 feet conceptually. It's another thing, and a completely different thing, to be able to implement that into a group setting. And so getting out, talking to people. I've got our staff right now reaching out to practitioners in their sports at our level to see how they are implementing a lot of these things that we're trying to research as a staff to improve our program. So you have to consistently sharpen the sword. And then I think so many times, and especially in this age, there's so much information. I mean, right now there's so many of these Zoom calls and clinics and meetups and all these types of things that, I mean, you're drinking from a fire hydrant. And so we make sure that we try to focus, like we take a specific topic every month, and we focus on that month or that project as we go. And so I love this acronym: follow one course until success. I think you got to focus on something, become an expert on it, write your position paper on it. When I was a young coach, I had a binder for every major topic: speed, strength, power, flexibility, nutrition. And as I felt like I filled that binder up, I would write my position paper on that topic. And then from there forward, everything that I read, I would compare back to that position paper to really kind of develop my philosophy or my approach for that type of area. So really important that you create your own principles, that you constantly challenge your ideals and sharpen the sword, and that you really deep dive and continue to become an expert in specific areas. From a technical standpoint, I mean, there's so much that you can do there, and that's really where most coaches spend their career, especially as a young strength coach. All they talk about, think about, do is sets, reps, progressions, talking to exercises, those types of things. But as we all know that go on to be head strength coaches or lead departments, that being a manager of time, people, and resources is really the challenge. That's the hard part. And quite frankly, we didn't go to school to learn how to manage people. We learned, we went to school for exercise physiology and kinesiology and biomechanics. We weren't taught these things. So unless you learn by fire and or you research like crazy, you're really going to fail in this area. And that's why a lot of people, quite honestly, get out of the profession, is because they just don't know how to manage these types of things. And so first and foremost, like I always say, if you're going to manage people, you have to start with your home team. Your home team has to be right before any team that you work with will be right. And so when you go to work at your family, super important that you tell them these three things consistently. This is coming from a book that I read called Raising the Modern Day Knight. It's all about creating, it's taking like the Middle Ages and creating rituals and moments, milestones throughout your child's life to define like these to these milestones. So when do they become an adult? Do they become an adult when they smoke cigarettes, have sex for the first time, become 18? Those are all the things that society says. You as a family member need to decide when they reach these milestones and help them and create, and you tell them when they meet them. But one of the key concepts out of the book that I thought was fantastic was these three things. You need to consistently tell them that you love them. This is as crazy as it sounds. It's hard for a lot of people to do. Especially I have a son and I have a half brother that lives with us, and for whatever reason, it's hard to always say I love you, and I think maybe just as men that's hard. So constantly challenging yourself to do that, and not just do it with your words, but also with your actions. Tell them that you're proud of them, especially if you have kids, especially if you have a spouse. My wife's literally getting in a car and moving cross country right now to come out here. And I told her last night that I was super proud of her for all the work that she's done in getting that house ready to go. And something that, a lot of people take for granted, but she was so emotional from just me saying that I was proud of her, that it was a good moment for us, and so making sure that you're saying that you're proud. And then I think the other thing is tell them what they do well. Tell them what they do well. They need to hear that from you, not their roommate, not their friend or their classmates or whatever. Those are all going to be important kind of resources for them, but you're the one that has your self-interest isn't compromised by other things and what you're telling them. So it should be the most trusted message from anybody coming from you. So tell them that you love them, tell them that you're proud of them, and tell them what they do well. When you're talking to family, financial piece in this field, especially right now, I think there's a lot of people that are on this probably that are struggling, a lot of gym owners and things like that, how could you possibly predict this type of economical fallout from, just a virus? And so, and especially in coaching, our jobs can be taken at any time. And early on in my career, it wasn't something that I put a lot of focus on. It wasn't really until I'd gotten fired, I didn't get fired, I moved on, but it could have been fired at South Florida, that I finally started really saying, okay, I need to work at this. I need to make sure that I'm putting money away in the right way. And so one of the best books that I found to do that and really lay things out was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. He's got a podcast. He's got a lot of different resources out there right now, but he talks about this, these steps basically, and these baby steps, I think is what he calls them. And so the first step in that equation is to create an emergency fund. Get $1,000 in the bank as quickly as you can. There's most things, flat tire or, something like that, usually $1,000 can cover those things, but those are emergencies. You're only using that money for emergency. From there, you start the debt snowball. You list out all your credit cards, you list out all your debt, you put in the interest rates, and most people will tell you to go towards the top one and try to knock that down because it's the highest interest rate or whatever it is. The debt snowball is pay the minimum payments on everything, start with the lowest one, pay that off, take that money and apply it to the next one. Pay that off, apply it to the next one. And it creates this snowball effect for you to kind of be gaining momentum towards getting out of debt. Once you pay those off, cut them up and get rid of them. Complete an emergency fund. I think in the book, they talk about 3 to 5 months or 3 to 6 months of living expenses. I would say as a coach, you need to have 12 months of living expenses in your savings because there's a good chance that there might be a time where you're out of coaching for a year. From there, invest 15% of your income into retirement. Most coaches don't recognize how much goes into how universities will typically match your retirement contribution. So it's just free money that we're not taking advantage of all the time. So make sure you're maxing out what you give and then go beyond that and do what you can. Save for college for your kids, and then lastly, build wealth like crazy. So I would highly encourage you. Nothing in a family will create more of a rift than money. And so making sure that you have that under control in those moments of transition, in those moments of tribulation, you're able to kind of have a clear head and not have to worry about it so much. Next, you have to manage athletes. I had a preacher at USF that would always say, you spell love, T-I-M-E. What you spend time on is what you love. And you have to spend, we have the athletes for 2 hours out of the day. They have 22 hours to mess up everything you just did. If you're not being involved in those other 22 hours in some way, shape, or form, you're fighting a losing battle. And so it's super important that you find ways. So this was us taking them, paintballing, whether, swimming or playing softball after a run, or, just going and having a meal with them, or going and checking out their dorm room, whatever. Find ways to spend time with your athletes outside. It's also why social media can be pretty important, because now you can be in that device, which is what's in their hand all the time. If you're constantly there somehow, some way, and reinforcing it and creating a relationship that way, it's huge. Simon Sinek wrote a book not too long ago, Start With Why. And I didn't call my meetings this until after that book, but I have why meetings at the beginning of every phase. And when I first meet athletes, like I did when I first came here to Fresno, I would sit down with them and we would go over their goals and use combine statistics and things like that to kind of motivate them. But the first 15 minutes of that was what I call their why meeting. And it's really, the concept in the book was, you got to know their why so that you can determine the how and the what. And I love the concept, but just saying, hey, what's your why? Why do you play football? That's not going to get you very far. So I asked 3 questions in that meeting. I asked them, if they weren't playing football, what would they do? That most of them haven't thought about their mortality in the sport. So thinking outside of that, tell them what they would do if football was taken away from them. A lot of times will give you some pretty good indications of what motivates them. I asked them what's the most difficult thing they've ever been through. We're oftentimes a product of our hard times. And so, learning what that was and why they tick is going to be, it's going to break down a lot of walls between you and them, but it's also going to, paint a picture. I had an athlete that watched his dad shoot his mom and then commit suicide right in front of him. So I'm not going to intimidate that kid. I'm not going to, make it so that he's scared in any shape or way. He's seen the hardest thing. He's seen what's bad. So by being there and lifting it, that kid needs love. He needs somebody that, to give him a hug. So really knowing what makes those athletes tick is going to be huge. And then lastly, the discipline piece, I go into this further with some other presentations, but discipline, you got the carrot or the stick, right? And the stick works, so 8, 8, and 8s, 8 laps, 800 yards, up downs, 8 prowler pushes. That's something that's a staple for us. That's going to be, if you miss a workout, you're going to do that. The point with the stick is you have to be clear. You have to be clear, and it has to be communicated, and it has to be consistent. So clear, communicated, and consistent. If you do that, it doesn't matter. So if it's the star athlete, you treat them one way and you treat the walk-on a different way, that's it. It doesn't have any value. But if you're consistent and you're clear about it and you let them know on the front end and you communicated it well so they know what they're choosing. So many times athletes will thank me after the fact because they ultimately they want to be great. They want to be held accountable. And they're going to appreciate you for being consistent in that way. I much prefer being the carrot, which is, curiosity and joy and finding creative ways like paintball and things like that to motivate our athletes and get them wanting to be around us and be around our, train in the program. But you got to have a combination of both. And so be clear with that, make sure you communicate it and build a great relationship with your athletes. As a strength and conditioning coach, you don't just have your athletes, you have your superiors and your colleagues, right? Your coaching relationships, that's administrators, staff, and the whole deal. And so You have to be able to lead up and lead down. So many times we think that it's just working with the athletes, but I mean, sometimes my hardest battles to get things done are with administration or sports medicine or sports nutrition or something along those lines. And so whenever you're working with that, you could easily break down relationships to the point where they're unrepairable, and you don't have an ally outside of the weight room. And so with those people, you need to keep them informed. You need to consistently show respect. You need to avoid arguments, and you need to estimate your advantages. You might be right in conversations. There's times when I'm meeting with Coach DeBoer, our head football coach, and I might be right, but at what cost, right? At what cost? You don't want to be a yes man or a yes woman. You want to make sure you speak your mind, but you want to do it in a respectful way. You want to, and when you are right and you're at an impasse, estimate your advantages and just recognize that at some point, hopefully, you're going to be able to get your point across. When you're managing your staff, I've made every single mistake. I've literally fired a person for not coming in to work during a hurricane. I've been that guy. I'm not proud of that, but I have been that guy. Staff is so super important, and and it's something that you don't necessarily, again, you don't know how to lead your team coming out of, you didn't learn that in exercise science class, right? You have to work at that, especially being a young 23-year-old head strength coach. That was something that, I struggled with. And so I hired people that were like me, my personality type. And what I realized is that I needed to have a balance. And so I make every one of our staff members take the Gary Smiley personality test. I know that a lot of people are familiar with the DISC profile or the Myers-Briggs or any of these other types of personality tests. Those are too complicated for me. This Gary Smiley, you're a lion, you're an otter, you're a beaver, you're a retriever. They all have strengths, they all have weaknesses. But the reality is this, that you need to keep a balance around you. You need to, if I'm a lion and I'm a vision caster and I like to pound my chest, but I'm bad with details, I need to make sure that I have a beaver on staff that's somebody that's meticulous, that takes 1 million notes, that has all the to-do list of things that we need to get done, that can check me when I might be overlooking different things. And so making sure that you have a balance, know who yourself is, and then know who your staff is. And when you're become a head strength coach, you can be your strength and hire for your weaknesses. And when you're a young strength coach, you need to consistently work on making your weaknesses stronger. You got to be clear with your expectations and responsibilities. I have a staff manual that lays out exactly what they need to do from a staff standpoint, from a sport responsibility standpoint, and then obviously with their sport, and then within their sport, what they need to be doing. And so making sure that's very clear, that you're consistently communicating that. I always, I tell our coaches, don't bring me a problem without a solution. I often have said that, I ask them what we did in 1969. Most of you guys probably wouldn't know. It was even before my time, but we put a man on the moon, right? And I tell people all the time, if we can put a man on the moon, then we can figure out how to get 2 teams to work out at the same time, or to get this coach to lay off on this certain thing or whatever, right? We can figure it out. So don't come to me without a problem. Don't come to me with a problem without a solution. And then making sure that we're constantly evaluating one another and giving them feedback and course correcting as we go. I don't really believe so much in really big staff evaluations. Every quarter we'll do them, but if you have to wait a quarter to be able to get somebody feedback, I think you're wrong, right? And then with staff, I've learned that you have to manage the money situation. Like you have to find a way to make sure. I mean, in this profession, a lot of times the slots are kind of slotted. So oftentimes what I've done, if my salary pool is $36,000, I may bring somebody in at $33,000 and bank that money, that $3,000, and give them a $2,000 raise next year, and then a $2,000 raise the next year, and a $2,000 raise the next year after that, so that I'm consistently showing them that I appreciate them. Because unfortunately, sometimes we equate that money to appreciation. And the reality is that, a lot of times, the state of the union of the university is what it is. So finding creative ways, always fighting for your people, always looking for opportunities to better their situation, but also making sure that you're managing that and letting them know that, hey, look, you're coming to this place for this, And where I'm going to give you value is I'm going to help you move on in this profession. I tell people right now that I hire head strength coaches, bottom line, period. I don't look for people that want to be assistants. I think even in that picture, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in that picture have gone on, 8 people in that picture have gone on to be head strength coaches. So I look for that. I expect that. And that's where I'll pour into people in that way. Resources, you have to manage resources. Again, we didn't take an accounting class in college. And so learning how to keep a professional budget, understanding a P&L statement, understanding the professional budget. What we do is I had an athletic director that told me once that, why would I give you money if every time that I come to you and say, we've got something, you say, you should always be able to make sure that you know exactly where that money's going to go, that you have a plan. And oftentimes when you have a plan and you can clearly and concisely show people that, then when there are opportunities to grab resources, you're in a position to be able to do that. So I have an Excel spreadsheet where we have make whole. Make whole is if we have 8 racks and I want a TRX at every rack and we have 7, to make whole, we need 1 more TRX, or we may need 5 more med balls, or we might need whatever, 55 to 150 dumbbells. That's to make whole. Needs are things like, you might need sleds, in your program, because that's how you would program and you're missing them. Wish list is exactly that. Things that you wish that you could get, maybe a lot of sports science and things like that usually fall into that category. And then major purchases are things like, I need to redo the weight room, get new racks, get new flooring, or get catapult or whatever. So what we do is we define that list, we rank them in order. So we know we always communicate that to our superiors, and our accountants, and then we gather intel. We get what the full price is on all those things. We make sure that we get 2 comparisons, and we make a write up. We show a couple creative ways how we might be able to do that. So if it's, we want 22 bars and we have 22 sports, one creative way to do that would be to have every sport pay for one of those bars. But we have it ready to go, and we use full MSRP. So that way, when we come back and we say, hey, whatever, Play, Rogue, Sorinex, whoever, give us a discount, that discount money we might be able to keep, or at least we look like a hero when we come in less than what we even said that we were going to do. And like I said, we have packets for those, so that when an AD walks in, I grab my binder, I flip it open, I'm like, this is exactly what we'd get. Here's our 2 comparisons. This is exactly what it would cost. And here's the write-up as to why it's important. And then you fundraise. We have a Power Club, we use social media, we go through coaches, kind of their fundraising budgets, to make sure that we have a way to try to bring additional revenue into our program. And then obviously develop relationships with boosters and those types of things. Lastly, take care of what you have. If you treat your current stuff like crap, then there's nobody that's going to give you more money just so that you potentially can keep and make that like crap as well. So super important that you take care of what you have. Lastly, here as a manager, you have to manage time. It's your most precious commodity that you have, right? You trade a minute of your life away for various things. So it's super important. So in our field, in our world, that's scheduling for success. We have kind of a way that I've done it is I first look to our revenue producing sports. What are the sports that produce the income for our university? From there, I go gate admission. Those are usually sports that try to offset their costs. Then we have our non-revenue sports. And so we'll kind of go through that hierarchy. But again, you have to be okay. You have to make sure it's equitable, and you have to make sure that your administration's on board with it. And then from there, we use an off season versus an in season. A lot of people go and say they're gonna train the team in season as a team when they're having to manage practice, treatment time, meetings, classes, all those things, and then they're trying to come in as a team. It's hard to find, right? So what we do is the off seasons when we need to be building team cohesion and togetherness and those things. So we'll train as a team in the off season. During the season, we train in small groups in the class blocks with the university. We'll go team over individual or small group, and then large team over small team. And that's essentially how we schedule. You have to become a master of communication and technology. This is something that I, early on in my career, I was the kind of guy that left my cell phone in the car, thought social media was the stupidest thing in the world, didn't really use any of these tools or take the time to use and learn any of these tools. But what I found was by learning how to use Google Docs or outsourcing things through Fiverr or creating movies on ScreenFlow or iMovie and creating systems that I can just do it once, record it, and pass it off the videos so my staff knows what to do. All save me time and give ultimately time back to my family. I remember being in South Florida the first year and going in Excel, doing our first 40s, typing in all the numbers, doing our second rep, typing in all the numbers, and then literally getting the calculator out and going, all right, 4.79 plus 4.75 divided by 2 to get the average. When we all know that all you have to do is do the little equation and drag it down and you're done. But those 15, 20 minutes that took was 15 or 20 minutes off my life that I couldn't get back. So technology exists to help make your life better. Make sure you're doing, your research, and I'm constantly on YouTube and other things to try to learn new skills and new tools to make my life more efficient. This was something that I didn't do early on in my career. I did not take advantage of free time. I wore it like a badge of honor. I wouldn't take vacations. My wife, this is a Little Gasparilla Island. This is in Florida. It was about 2 or 3 hours away from South Florida, and my wife would always take me down here kicking and screaming on like long weekends and stuff. And once I got there, it's the place, there's no roads or anything like that. You have to take a ferry to get over to it. It's a 7-mile long island, like 2 miles wide at its widest point, and there's nothing on it. No restaurants, no bars, no anything. And all you can do is relax. And by the time I would leave, I was fully relaxed and the whole deal. But you got to find a place, you got to find time, you got to re-energize and give, spend time, not just in your own kind of personal soul searching, but also with your family and away from work. That's where most of my best ideas have come from, when I'm just kind of completely absent from work. So this is my island. Do not come to my island. Find your own place, but find a place for you to take advantage of your free time. You got to have a plan for dealing with distraction, emails, disorganization in your office, phone calls, text, instant messages, the internet, people, staying healthy, projects and tasks. Like all these things will suck time away from you. And so, I make sure that I check emails at different periods of time in the day. I'll make sure that I go and walk if I'm making phone calls to get a little extra walking in or get, to stay healthy a little bit better. I make sure I block off my time for my training. I'll shut the door and put a do not disturb sign on it if I need to really dial in and focus on something. But make sure you have a plan for all these things. The best thing I can recommend you to do is go on Google Calendar, create a new calendar that's the perfect week. Go in and drop in. When are you waking up? When are you eating? When are you working out? Where are you going to work on projects for the future? Where are you going to work on current projects? Put all that in and then drop that in over your current your calendar. And so now when I get when I need to call somebody back, I look to see where I have calls on my calendar, and I'll put in a reminder or a task during that time to call somebody back. And I just won't be immediately calling them back. I'll call them back when it's convenient for me. Death by Meaning. If you haven't read that book, Patrick Lencioni, I would definitely recommend that. A lot of times you get into being a head strength coach and you want to have meetings just to have meetings and talk just to talk. And your staff, meanwhile, looks like this guy down here in the bottom right corner. So you want to make sure that you have intention behind your meeting. So we have our daily check-in. That's going to be a 15-minute standing meeting out on the floor. We're going to talk about what we're doing. We're going to go over the message for the day, any injuries or things like that. We'll do a debrief as well that's very similar to that, where we'll go through the same thing and grade workouts and all that. We have a weekly tactical. In that meeting, our staff goes around and they each have 5 minutes to describe what's going on with their sports, if there's any issues. And then they each go back around and they have their individual responsibilities and they'll give updates on those. That's about a 30-minute meeting once a week, just to be tactical. Anything, try to prevent emails is really the goal of that meeting. Our monthly strategic, this is where we're planning. This is where we're working on things, our projects. We're planning things out for the next month. We're looking at the calendar. We'll make sure we're staying ahead, those types of things. And then we always have a offsite review or quality control meeting at the end of every phase where we'll get out, we'll go get some food, we'll go to somewhere different, and we'll go through, like we just did this. Unfortunately, we had to do it on Zoom because of everything, but we went through our winter training program and we just literally every piece of paper that we collected during the winter, we went through, we created systems, we started to plan out next winter so that we were quite a ways ahead. And now we got the whole year just to try to improve on that. And lastly here, you want to be a great entrepreneur. So you got to be a great technician, you have to be a great manager, and you have to be a great entrepreneur. You do have a personal brand. I think a lot of strength coaches or a lot of coaches in general, they look at this and they think of the self-promoting douchebags or the internet gurus or whatever. And the reality is this: everybody has a brand, and so it's best to embrace that. Now, I build my brand off of a platform of education. I want to make sure that I'm always giving back. I find it hard for people to take shots or question what I'm doing if I'm putting out books to help you become a better coach, or speaking to help you become a better coach, or doing whatever, putting out a podcast or whatever. If I'm doing that just to benefit me, then I think a lot of times there's problems with that. So I think if you have a platform of education, I think you're pretty solid. Now you just got to kind of figure out what that looks like for you. What's going to be your medium? Is that going to be the internet? Is it going to be podcasting? Is it going to be speaking, camps, whatever it's going to be? So 5 tips to brand yourself here. Define your brand, become an expert. I think you got to become an expert. You got to go deep. You got to niche down into a specific topic. So don't just say that you're going to be the best football strength coach. Go a level. Say, I'm going to be the best football strength coach for high school. And you can go even a level beyond that. I'm going to be the best strength coach for high school quarterbacks. And if you become niche down like that, then you can start to build authority. Doesn't mean you abandon everything else. It just means that that's where you start to build authority and put out content so that other people can start to learn who you are. Make your brand targeted, establish an online presence, and control the Google results. In our world, these message boards and all that, they rank high because there's so many people using them. So if somebody goes on, I don't even know what Fresno State's message board is, but if they go on Fresno State's most message board and they say that Coach Mack is terrible and we got pushed around all the way on the field, that's going to rank really high on Google. So unless I'm making sure that I have Ron McKeefery Facebook page and Twitter page, and I have ronmckeefery.com, those are going to make sure that they're going to rank any higher because there's more people on Facebook. So you want to make sure that you control the first page of Google. You want to generate brand awareness through networking. So that's giving, mutualism. Don't just take, also give. That you find ways to give back. So you're constantly asking and giving to people ahead of you, but you're also giving back. That you're targeted and where you're putting your time, and that you're constantly reconnecting with the people that you have built relationships with. And then lastly here, you want to create a system, So I think in this world, in this field, you have to, the number one thing that is going to decide whether or not you retire being a strength and conditioning coach is if you have a plan for the periods of transition. And so to do that, first you have to establish financial security. You got to plug leaks. This is one of my favorite things. I mean, so many times we're always focused on like finding more money or asking for more money. But like once every quarter, my wife and I will go through our bills and we'll say, okay, Mr. Cable Company, Mr. Cell Phone Company, whoever, what's the best deal you can give us? Or we're going to go off to this other better deal that we paid attention to and found, and we'll negotiate our bills and get them down lower. So if we can save an extra $100 a month, I just gave myself $100 raise. And then you want to, you can also find ways to create multiple streams of income, and so to do that, you got to clarify what your unique value is. You got to identify what your market is. You got to build a community. This is where I think a lot of strength coaches really need to focus, is you got to build your tribe of people that know, like, and trust you. That's why I like the podcast. When I built the podcast and consistently gave free content forever, I had built a community of people that knew, liked, and trusted me, that where when I did come out with a book, there was people there to want to buy it and pay attention to listen to it. So Tribes is a good book by Seth Godin, if you haven't read that, but I think everybody that's listening is in a position where you can know, like, and build a community of people that know, like, and trust you. Then look for, create a solution, find something, solve a problem, and plan a launch. And there's a saying in the entrepreneur world that if you're not embarrassed by your first podcast, speaking engagement, clinic, product, whatever, if you're not embarrassed by that, you waited too long. So take action. This is a book. Robert Kiyosaki has you probably heard of his Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but he has a book that's called the Four Cash Flow Quadrants. So four cash flow quadrants. And really, to me, this is our number one challenge as an entrepreneur, is to try to figure out, okay, how do I go from just being an employee where I have a job and that's dictated by somebody else, right? Some people go off and they open their own gyms, and they become self-employed. But even then, like, you got to work to get paid, right? If you get hit by a bus and you're out of work, or coronavirus hits and you're out of work, then it's a challenging time. Then there's business owners, where you have people that are making you money, and then you have investing, which is your money making you money. So our goal is to try to figure out how to make strength and conditioning to go from being just an employee to where you're investing either time or money or resources into making you more time, money, or resources. So as to wrap this up, T plus N plus E, you can't be such a great technician that you can't relate to people, right? And we all know those coaches that are such great Excel programmers, but when they get out there to go coach, nobody wants to pay attention to them. Or you can't be so good with people but not coach. Or you can't have your head in the clouds to where you're going to solve all the world's problems as an entrepreneur, but you won't put your head down and do the work to make that happen. So be a great technician, be a great manager, be a great entrepreneur. How I develop myself in those ways, I rotate. I read about a book a week typically. Now I read, that may be listened to on Audible, that may be an ebook, it may be something along those lines, but I'll rotate. I'll have one that's a technical book. So I'll read something that's a strength and conditioning. Then I'll read something in business or leadership, right? And then I'll read something in being an entrepreneur and something outside of my field and my discipline for motivation. So appreciate you guys. Matt, this has been a phenomenal event. I commend you, respect you for putting this on, and everybody that was involved. That's my email, website, my handles and stuff like that. If you guys want to continue this, I can answer questions via social media and stuff. I know we got a little bit of time here, Jay or Matt or whoever, but happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
The first one, Mac, that's come up a couple times. What was the third question you asked your athletes in the Y meeting?
Oh, sorry, I didn't say that, did I? So the first question was, what if they didn't play football? What would they do? Second one, the most difficult thing. Third is, who's the most influential person in their life? And I asked that not just to find out who that is and who had an influence, but I also asked that so that I know who that person is, and I get their permission to call that person. And then I'll call that person and let them know, tell them something good, because usually if they see a coach calling, they think it's something bad. So I'll tell them something good, and then I'll let them know that person said that they were the most influential person. So it's a real powerful moment for them. But then we hang up, and 9 times out of 10, that person's calling that athlete and kind of signing off on me as a coach. So I now have the most influential person in their life saying, hey, man, that coach you have really cares about you, that really loves you, and is there for you. That's pretty powerful too.
No doubt, man. No doubt. I got a selfish one, Matt.
Yep.
Welcome back to the game, brother.
Appreciate it.
What's the one thing that you can only pick one from your time with Play that you brought with you out there that changed Coach Mac as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, with play, what you guys, I know it didn't seem like it maybe from afar, but I was still coaching quite a bit every single day there. So I don't think I would ever really out of the game per se. Really, really appreciative of my time at play and that company. The thing that I took away the most was probably the confidence in knowing that this field, if whether or not, if I was to get fired tomorrow, I know 100% that I'd be okay. I know that I have a skill set that would that translates really, really well to the business world, because all those skills that I've developed as being a technician and a manager and an entrepreneur, stuff that I've naturally had to do to be an effective coach and successful coach, are the things that are premiums outside in the outside world that you do. And so learning those business skills, being able to apply those to coaching, and having the confidence to know that if things were to not go well, I'd be okay. That's what I took away.
I love it. I love it. Now, let me ask you this, just to piggyback it. What's some advice on establishing and promoting your niche and brand when you feel as though there are already qualified coaches providing that service?
Yeah, I think this is a common question. If you read a lot of entrepreneurial stuff, they'll tell you that just because somebody's doing something in the space that you want to be in, all they're doing is they're proving that there's a market for what you want to do, right? You are uniquely you, and you have your own message, your own spin, your own way of kind of conveying that. And the other part of that is if you build your tribe, the people that know, like, and trust you, well, then maybe you're helping those people out, and there's somebody else that's helping out a different tribe of people. So if you focus just on helping people in your tribe, and in a court of law, a expert witness is somebody that knows more about that topic than anybody else in the room. So as long as you're leading people that are maybe a step or two behind you in the journey, you can feel confident in knowing that you've got your own message that you can be given.
That's awesome, man. Mac, I can't thank you enough, brother. This was sensational. Truly appreciate everything, not just your time tonight, bud, but like everything you've done for people like me who've been trying to figure out all of this stuff and do these things, man. I'm truly grateful for everything you've done.
Likewise, man. Good friend. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
And guys, just as a reminder, donations, they're still good. Hop on over, make sure that you're popping into the GoFundMe. And for those of you who have asked, I believe these are all going to be live on YouTube and the Hawken YouTube page. So you can get back at all these whenever you need. Because there's a lot of stuff in these talks that I definitely am going to go back and check myself. But I would be dismayed if I didn't say that I'm a little sad that we're coming to the end, and we're coming to our third and final presenter for the night, my friend Mike Robertson. Mike is a physical preparation specialist. And I'm not going to say strength coach Mike. He is a physical preparation specialist practicing in Indianapolis, Indiana at the only iFast. Mike's contributions to coaching go back more than 10 years with multiple must-have products for coaches in their educational toolbox. Mike publishes a fantastic weekly podcast show, the Physical Preparation Podcast, has a blog, and runs one of the best continuing education events in the entire country. I'm really excited to be able to sit down and hear what Mike has to say today. So Mike, welcome, brother.
My guy, thank you so much, man. Honored to be here and great to see you, man. Everything's good?
Yeah, buddy. Everything's great, man. I'm glad to see you too. Things good up in Indy?
Yeah, man. Living the dream, brother.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well,
awesome. Well, give me a second here. I will fire this up. And you let me know. All right. See if we can make this work. Hopefully this is coming through for all of you. So first off, want to thank all of you guys for tuning in. Obviously 8 p.m. You're old when 8 p.m. you're kind of winding down versus cranking back up. But I'm excited to do this. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully you all take a few things away from my talk here tonight. So tonight's presentation is all about supersets, and I call it supersets theory, practice, and application, because for me, at the end of the day, I'm a coach, and I love theory. I love understanding the whys behind stuff, but when it comes down to it, stuff has to be practical and I have to be able to apply it. So that's what we're going to focus on here tonight. Hopefully give you guys a few new tools for the toolbox that you can start using as soon as you're back in the gym. So as Jay-Z said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate you guys coming on here tonight. But I want to give you guys just a little bit of insight as to who I am, what I'm all about, because I think this will give you guys some insight as to why I do things the way that I do. So I've been in the game 20 years now. It's crazy to think about it like that. And I've spent years in basically every nook and cranny of the fitness industry. I did D1 strength and conditioning. I worked in a rehab facility. I did one-on-one in-home personal training. And after bouncing around to all those different spots, I knew, man, I need to settle. I need to find one spot and just lock it down. So in basically August of 2008, Bill Hartman and I opened iFast, small 2,200 square foot facility. And to think about what we've accomplished over the last 12 years, I mean, it still makes my heart race a little bit, because I knew as a young kid growing up, I loved sports. I love the idea of using strength training and using the gym to become a better athlete. So to look back and see some of these amazing athletes, I mean, we got Roy Hibbert, we got Dwayne Allen, Chad Marshall, who's like one of the LeBron Jameses of the MLS, Lori Lindsay played for the women's national team. I worked with the Indy 11, our local soccer club, for 5 years. Our gym was named one of the top 10 gyms in America numerous times by Men's Health magazine. So to think that, you know, the success that we've had and the accolades, I mean, all that's great, but ultimately it's about the people that we've worked with. And we've been blessed to work with just amazing human beings over the last 12 years. Now that also leads to a question of like, why do I do this? Why do I do the education side? And I was doing an Instagram live with my good friend Sam Pogue today, and he asked me, you know, like, why do you do this? Or how did you get started with continuing education? And honestly, for me, I've always felt compelled to give back, whether it was an event like this, whether it was creating content, writing articles back in the day. I've always felt compelled to give content and to give back the things that I've learned, because, man, I'm blessed. I came up in the internet age, so I had access to people like Dave Tate, Louis Simmons, Charles Poliquin, Ian King, all these people that kind of started strength and conditioning, you know, at least in the way that we know it, right? So it's always been an honor for me to give back. And hopefully, as we go through this, that's going to shine through a little bit. So let's start with a really kind of salient question here. Why do we use supersets in our programming? Why do you guys use supersets? And a rhetorical question, because I think there's a lot of reasons and a lot of rationales behind it. But what I want to focus on here are a handful of different strategies that you guys can use. Some of them you'll be familiar with, and some of them may be a little bit more unfamiliar, but things that you want to try when you get in the gym. So when it comes to supersets, and you ask somebody, why do you use supersets in your program? You're going to get a lot of answers. Sometimes you'll get, I want to build more muscle. I want to shed more body fat. I want to improve movement quality. I think that's a really big buzzword these days. I want to increase strength, force, or power output, right? We want to see some performance benefits. But let's be real here. A lot of times it's flat out, we got to save time. And I don't care if you're in a Division I setting, if you're in a professional setting, or you're in a private setting. A lot of times it's all about saving time and condensing things to get more work done in a shorter period of time. You have to be good about managing your time during your training sessions. So what I want to focus on are 7 ways that you can use supersets. And the way my brain works is I like to think there's kind of a general way to do it and then a little bit sexier way to do it. So we've got our basic physiology techniques, and we have what I would describe as our sexier, our more neurological based superset strategies. So these are probably going to be familiar for you, and we're going to blow through them. We're not going to spend a ton of time on them, but we've got our upper lower splits. We've got our targeted muscle supersets. We've got our opposing muscle supersets. But then where things get fun, we can use tools like inhibition to facilitation. So we're shutting something off to turn something back on. We can use patterning supersets to clean up our movement patterns. We got potentiation supersets where we may use a heavy strength exercise paired with a plyometric or explosive exercise. And then we've got what I call layering techniques. And while this may not be a pure superset, in the clearest sense of the word, I still think it's a tool and a strategy that you're going to want to try out. So here's how I'm going to break each one of these strategies down. We're going to start with the theory, or the why, because I think it's very important that we understand why we're doing stuff. It's something that I ask every group of interns when they start writing programs for us. I tell them, look, you need to have a rationale for everything that's in your program. So I want you to understand why we might choose some of these strategies. Second, I'm going to give you some examples. And sometimes, look, the examples aren't meant to be perfect, but they're there to illustrate a point. And then last but not least, I'm going to give you some application and some notes, because look, some of these strategies are awesome, but I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. So what I'm going to try and do is help you understand some of the mistakes that I made so that you guys can fast track your own results and you don't have to make those same mistakes. So let's dive in and let's jump through these. So the first one that we're going to talk about, or the first superset structure, is an upper lower alternating superset. Now, chances are, if you've done this more than a year or two, you've probably written some sort of program like this. But the question becomes, why do we do it? Why do we use an upper lower alternating superset? And the thing that's interesting is when you ask people why they do this, a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, I do this because it minimizes fatigue. And I'd have to like pause for a moment and respectfully disagree, because what happens is, let's say you're doing a squat and a push-up. When you're alternating between those two, what actually happens is central fatigue goes up, right? Like your heart, your lungs, they never get a break. So you're working really hard the whole time. So your heart, your lungs, your cardiorespiratory system is working incredibly hard. But what it does do is it minimizes that local or peripheral fatigue. So imagine you're doing a set of 10 squats, right? Decent weight, you're working hard. You do that set of 10, you're huffing pretty good. Well, now let's say you take 60 seconds rest and then you do it again, and 60 seconds rest and you do it again. You can imagine how your legs feel if you're doing 3 sets of 10 in about 5 to 6 minutes. Now, let's flip that and let's imagine you're doing a set of squats, minute break. Now you're doing a set of push-ups, minute break, set of squats. So you've got a longer period of time in between those sets of squats. So what it does, it minimizes that local fatigue in a specific muscle group, but it's going to increase the central fatigue overall. So let's look at a couple upper lower examples and different ways that you guys can set this up. And again, I'm just trying to give you very general examples that you can use. You could do something like a squat and a push-up, right? Again, lower, upper. You could do a split squat in a row. Basically, you can do anything with your lower body and anything with your upper body, and it's going to work and it's going to fit into this structure. Now, with that being said, I've made some mistakes doing this, right? First and foremost, if you're going to do this type of workout, generally it's set up for a more fat loss or conditioning based workout. You're generally working a little bit faster. So if that's the case, and if you're prescribing this for fat loss purposes, make sure you're monitoring the pace of the workout. Too often, a 1 minute rest turns into 2 to 3 minutes, and now you're losing that metabolic effect. So you got to make sure if you're asking for a minute rest period in between sets, that they're working and keeping up that pace. Second, this is something that I had to learn the hard way. You got to watch the lower back. And we all have athletes, we all have clients that struggle with lower back issues. So if that's the case, what you need to be doing, don't pair like a deadlift and a hinge together and then pair it with a bent over row, because now that lower back is being asked to hold a set position for a very extended period of time. And that's when somebody may get into some issues or have some struggles. So watch out for the lower back. A third thing to watch out for is grip. And this is, again, where a lot of people like to talk about doing like back workouts. If you go into the old muscle and fitness workouts and they're doing deadlifts and rows and chins and all these back exercises, it's great. But if you do it in a superset fashion where you're doing something like a hinge where you have to grip on and hold, and then you do something like a row and a chin immediately after it, by the time you get to that third set or that third superset, a lot of times the grip is toast. Okay, so these are things that you need to watch out for. So you got your standard upper lower alternating supersets. You also have your targeted muscle supersets. And here I've got compound to isolation, but you can flip that too. You can go isolated to compound as well. So why do we use these types of supersets? And look, there are people that are far smarter than me that understand hypertrophy way better than me. But just as a general rule, you're using targeted muscle supersets to increase time under tension or mechanical load, or you're doing it for a very specific muscle group, right? You're like trying to hypertrophy or fatigue a specific muscle group. So let me give you a couple examples here, and this will probably make a little bit more sense. You know, if we want to be kind of a little bit bro-ish, you know, we could do like a bench press, right? Something heavy and compound, and then superset it with a fly. We can do a closed grip bench press, and then we can do a tricep extension. We can do a squat and a leg extension. But in general, the way you set this up, you do a big compound lift, take a little bit of a break, and then you superset it with an isolative exercise. Now, here's what's cool. We're all in quarantine right now, right? If you're watching this, you're probably locked up somewhere. You probably don't have access to all of the equipment that you normally would. So what if you took this whole superset structure and you just flipped it, right? So maybe you can't bench press, but you can do push-ups. Well, you could probably crush a ton of push-ups if you did them first. So what if you flipped this and you did your flies first and then you did a push-up? Or what if you did a bunch of tricep extensions first and then you did like a closed grip push-up? So this is just a different way that you can apply this same strategy based on the tools that you have in front of you. Now, a couple notes here. Generally, if you're going to set up a program like this, it's going to be used in a split routine. So it's rare you're going to do a bunch of isolative stuff in a total body routine. So what you generally do, if you're doing an upper lower split, you could use it there. If you're doing a true like bodybuilding body part split, you could use it there as well. But the great thing about this is too, you can place this really anywhere in the workout. You can use it as a main and lead off with it. You can also do it as like a burnout at the end of your session. So there's lots of ways that you can set this up, because we've all done this, right? At some point in time, I think most of us have gone through like a closet bodybuilding phase, whether you want to agree to it or admit it or not. I know I did. So if that's you, look, you can use isolation and isolation at the end, you know, your old school 3-way tricep series. If you're just trying to fill out the shirt a little bit, you can do flies from different positions. So tons of ways you can set this up as well. And there's not a lot of wrong ways to do it. The big thing here is you just got to watch the loading on the first exercise, because a lot of times you may crush that first set, right? And then you do that isolative exercise, and then you do that main a second time and you're like, ooh, man, the magnets are coming on. And by the third time you do that, you're getting crushed. What was a set of 10 and your first set is now like a set of 3 or 4. So always watch the loading on the first exercise, maybe gear it down a little bit or underplay it just a little bit to make sure you're getting the most out of the workout. Superset structure number 3 is our opposing muscle groups. And again, you know, why do we use this? Well, number one, again, if we do like bench press, rest, bench press, rest, we get a lot of fatigue in one muscle group. So if you don't want to, you know, just crush one muscle group and you want to avoid that, you can pair a front to back muscle group. So like a chest and a back or something like that. And again, people way smarter than me understand the pump and hypertrophy and how that all works together. But, you know, a lot of bodybuilders swear by it. And there's a lot of really big dudes out there that subscribe to this type of methodology. So again, some basic rationales to why you might use it. When we talk about our opposing muscle groups, what can we do? All right, we could do our presses and our pulls. So our bench press and our chest supported row. We could do, and again, this is where I'm doing it for illustrative purposes. I'm not saying you should go out and crush leg extensions and leg curls, but it's another way you could do it. Or our old school triceps and biceps. I got my guy, Zach Irvin here. I mean, look, your athletes love crushing arms. So we threw this up on the gram one day because he was feeling pretty good about himself. So, hey, if you guys want to throw this stuff in the workout from time to time, I'm throwing arm farm in pretty much every Friday with my athletes because, look good, feel good, play good. Joe Ken said that, I don't know how long ago, but it's something that's always stuck out in my head. So a couple pieces of notes. This stuff can be done with compound or isolative exercises. So it doesn't just have to be big stuff. It can be little stuff like your arm work at the end of a session. Here's the cool thing though. It could be used to restore movement, or it could be used, or it could potentially hold back your movement throughout, right? So if you're doing, say, a push-up and then a row, you're getting that nice, clean, full range of motion. But if you're not using a full range of motion, or if you're doing it in kind of like a herky-jerky kind of way, you could actually be hampering your movement as well. So this is something I'm always thinking about with athletes. Very rarely do I want to take away or restrict motion. So you got to make sure that they're doing it correctly, that they're working through a full range of motion, because while we may train bodybuilders right? Or people that want to build solely muscle. If you're training athletes, you got to make sure that they're doing this in the most effective manner to make sure that they don't lose mobility. But the biggest benefit here, if you're going to do this kind of setup, is saving time, right? If you're going to do chest and back or arms, biceps, triceps, you're saving time because ultimately you need to get in and out of the gym a little bit faster. So with those more basic setups and structures being out there, now I want to get to what I would call like our sexier variations. And these are the ones that I think for you coaches that are looking to really tweak and take your programs to the next level, these are some of the tools that we've used for extended periods of time with our clients and with our athletes to really make sure that they're not only moving better, but that we're also improving their performance as well. So this first one is very simply an inhibition to a facilitation exercise. So why would we use a superset like this? And I'll give you examples here in a minute. But the way I think about this is an inhibition to facilitation superset is there to improve movement quality and or to cement a more optimal position at a specific joint. So let's give you, for instance, how many of our athletes have this wicked anterior pelvic tilt? And I'm not here to vilify an anterior pelvic tilt, but it could cause problems, right? Maybe it's causing an hip impingement. Maybe it's causing lower back pain. Maybe it's causing them to pull their hamstring time and time and time again. Well, this is a situation where I might want to use this type of superset to try and level their pelvis a little bit more and get them moving a little bit more effectively. So let me give you a couple examples here. The most obvious example, and the one that you've probably all used at some point in time, bang out a hip flexor stretch and then do a glute bridge. So if you think about your pelvis, you're trying to shut off or inhibit the muscles on the front side that are pulling the pelvis forward. And then you're going to use a glute bridge to try and pull the pelvis backward or to help try and get that hip extension back. All right. So that one's really simple. And I think everybody's tried that at some point in time. Now, we can make it cooler, right? Nobody said that you have to do hip flexor stretches and glute bridges. You could do a half kneeling exercise, right? So something like a half kneeling cable press like Meg's here is doing. And then pair that with a core exercise, because you got to think on the front side of your pelvis, there's a tug of war going on, right? Your hip flexors pull down, your abdominals pull up. So if you want to level the pelvis out, shut off the hip flexors to pull the pelvis up, and then train the abdominals to pull the pelvis up and hold that position as well. So hopefully that makes sense. And then last but not least, we could do any half kneeling exercise, right? We don't have to just do this basic hip flexor stretch. Put somebody in half kneeling and then have them hinge on top of it, right? So let's say this half kneeling cable press, and then let's go work on a pull through. Let's go work on a trap bar deadlift. Let's work on bringing those hips through. So this is where it doesn't have to be like the old school corrective exercise. And Jay's probably laughing because I did a presentation back in the day on corrective exercise, but it doesn't have to be like that, right? It doesn't have to be just laying on your back and breathing. I mean, you can make it really sexy and really functional all at the same time to where your athletes and your clients feel like they're training. And that's such a key point. If they just feel like they're in like group PT, nobody wants that. They want to feel like they're training and they're getting better. So a couple notes here and ways that you can use this. In general, the way I set this up is something that pairs inhibition of the hip flexors with activation or loading of the hip extensors. So when you think about shutting off the front side, I'm thinking your hip flexor stretches, your half kneeling exercises, something to shut off the front side, and then combining that with either an abdominal exercise or a hip extension exercise to try and level that pelvis out and get it moving a little bit better. Another great piece about this, it can be used almost anywhere in the session. So there's times if you know, or if you're familiar with the R7 system, man, I'll use this as a reset, or in R3, my readiness. So I'll use it ramping up into a session. I'll use it mid-session to try and make sure somebody's moving a little bit better. Or I'll even use it at the end of a session to restore movement and make sure that when my client or my athlete walks out of the gym that they're feeling awesome. So now that we've covered inhibition to facilitation, next I want to talk about patterning supersets. And these are a really, really cool setup. It helps your clients and your athletes figure out movement strategies very, very quickly, especially some of those tricky movements like a squat, or like a hinge. So why do we use patterning supersets? What do they bring to the table? And I think of patterning supersets as something that's going to help improve movement quality in a specific lift, exercise, or movement, right? And it'll make more sense here when I start to give you some examples. So here are some examples of how I set up a patterning superset. And I'll give you videos too, because I know how important that is. So one of the exercises that I love, and if I can go back here, see if I can make this work. So patterning or a PVC squat. So all I'm doing here in this position is camping out and basically working on an isometric squat. And then I would pair that with an actual squatting variation, like a goblet squat, like a reaching squat, because I'm trying to teach that movement pattern. Another way you can do this, we've all done the wall tap hip hinge, right? We get an athlete close to the wall, we have them put their hands on their thighs, and we have them push their hips back. So they learn how to hinge with a neutral spine position. Well, let's take that, and let's take that understanding of where we want their spine, how to load their hamstrings, and now let's actually have them hinge afterwards. So it's pattern, load, and you're just doing that repeatedly to help them better understand the movement pattern. Another way to do this is putting them in a half kneeling position. Because how many times have we seen an athlete when they split squat or lunge and they're like all over the place, their hips are rotating, their knees wobbling, their foot's all over. Put them in a half kneeling position first. Get them comfortable there. And then once they've dialed in that position, now let's stand them up and let's make the exercise a little bit more dynamic where they got to go up and down. So there's lots of cool ways you can set this up. So let me give you a couple practical examples here. So this is my girl, Taya. Taya is like 6'3". She's a phenomenal basketball player. She's playing in Greece right now. Should be in the WNBA, just for the record. But she really struggles to squat. Like a lot of our basketball players, really struggles to squat. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to give her this PVC squat. And this is a video, believe it or not, but she's reaching long. She's trying to sit down into a nice athletic position, and she's breathing into her back, right? Because if your back is very extended, like imagine a power lifter, and I'm going to kind of turn profile here, but imagine a power lifter where everything is closed off on the back side. They have to sit so far back, it's very hard for them to load their quads, to learn how to sit down. And this is imperative for basketball players. They have to learn how to sit down so they can play defense, so that they can move effectively side to side, and so they can improve their vertical jump. So we need to teach them how to squat down and up. So we do this patterning exercise to shut off that backside, and then we teach her to goblet squat. And after we put a little bit of a block underneath her, this looks even better. Now, keep in mind, when I started with Taya 2 years ago, she could not squat. I mean, literally everything, whether she liked it or not, was vertical tibia. She had to sit so far back. So this is a massive improvement for her. And it's showed up time and again because now she's a better defender. Now she's more athletic. She's quicker on her feet. So this is a great strategy. If you're working with athletes that struggle to squat, or that are struggling to squat in a truly squatty pattern, right? Where they sit down versus back, this is a great superset to help pattern the squat and make sure they're doing it more effectively. So a couple notes here, and this is kind of like a chicken or the egg thing, because people will say, well, which exercise do you do first? And I think of it as, if I want to pattern an exercise, I'm going to do the inhibition exercise first, right? So I'm going to pattern, load. Now, if you're just looking to restore motion, right? So let's say somebody squats pretty well, but over the course of a workout, they tend to kind of lose their position a little bit, or they tend to default back to old patterns. What I may do in that case is do the loading exercise first, and then pattern them with the second exercise to restore their motion. So as you can see, this is a really cool tool, a really cool superset that you can use that can help numerous clients and athletes. It just depends on how you structure it and how you set it up. Superset structure number 6, potentiation. And this is where things are starting to get fun. Because look, at the end of the day, we all want bigger, faster, stronger athletes, right? Like that's the name of the game. We want to increase force production. We want to increase power production. But how do we go about doing that? So when we talk about potentiation supersets, the way I think about this, and again, this is like 20 years of experience, right? When we got started, I think we were so focused on muscles, right? We got to build bigger muscles, and we never thought about the nervous system. we never thought about the impact that the nervous system had on our body and on performance. So now when I think about a potentiation superset, I think of this as a strategy to stimulate or desensitize the nervous system to improve force or power output. When you're first starting out lifting, the reason you can't lift that bar anymore is because your brain legitimately tells your body, I'm going to get hurt, and it shuts down. So the goal over time is to slowly and steadily increase the load and desensitize your nervous system so that when you put a really heavy weight on your back, it doesn't freak out. So here are a couple examples, and I got a ton of videos of this one because I think, number one, it's cool to watch, and number two, it's going to give you guys a lot of ideas. So we've got our old school, like do a squat and then pair it with a box jump. We've got a deadlift and we pair it with a broad jump. We could do a bench press and pair that with a supine med ball throw, so something explosive for the upper body. And I don't know about you, but I've found a ton of different ways that you can do this for the lower body, but I find you have to be a little bit more creative for the upper body, because a lot of times people show off the lower body stuff, but there aren't nearly as many safe and effective ways to do this for the upper body. So you just got to be smart about it. You got to find and dig in to find a lot of different options. So here are a couple examples for you, and I'll mute this because you don't want to hear all the sounds, but here's my boy, Glenn Robinson. Now, look, Glenn touched 12.4 in college before I ever touched him. Like maxed out the Vertec, they had to stack it on top of boxes. So I'm not really trying to make this guy jump any higher. I'm just trying to stimulate his nervous system, give him enough of a boost so that he maintains that strength and that power, you know, throughout the off season. So here we're doing a trap bar deadlift. And I mean, this guy's pretty rock solid with his technique. So we bang out a set of 3 here. We take a minute or 2 rest, and then we go next door and we do a set of drop step box jumps. And I mean, look, that's crazy, right? That's a 36-inch box and he's not even working to get up there. So making it look very easy. So in this case, we got a hex bar deadlift that's a little bit more upright. Again, with my basketball players, I don't want to get on a soapbox about basketball, but I'm generally going to keep them a little bit more upright. And then he's going to pair that with a box jump. Now, let's talk about big boys. So this is fun. So that was Glenn, right? Here is his little brother, Jeelan. Jeelan is like 6'2", 300 pounds, playing in the XFL until they got shut down. But for Jeelan, he plays defensive line, defensive tackle, defensive end. So a very horizontal powered focused sport. So what we're doing here, we're going to bang out a set of trap bar deadlifts. Oh, sorry. Although that does sound cool. I mean, he's moving that bar at like 0.7, 0.8, like no problem. So we're going to train that. Yeah, 0.73 average. Yeah, 0.73, something like that. So that dude's moving that bar. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to bang out some tire flips, getting the hips down and working on that horizontal power output. Again, beast mode, dude's a savage. And then here's Jeelan one other time. Now with these bigger guys, like sometimes with basketball guys, I'll do like band resisted jumping variations. And I do band resisted because I'm cheap and don't have money for a Vertec or a Vertimax. But with these bigger guys, what I don't want to do is slow them down, right? With these big guys, I want them to feel fast. I want them to feel explosive. So in this case, what we did with G, we used a band assisted squat, and then we paired it with a band assisted jump. So the big thing here, this is like right before he went to camp, like we want some pace behind this, right? I don't want it to be slow. I don't want him grinding. I made that mistake in the past where we're using too much weight. So banging out a good set there. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to jump. And he's, I mean, this guy's getting up. Like he can get on that 36-inch box pretty easy because of course they're brothers. So they got to have that sibling rivalry thing going on. So lots of ways you can set this up. But potentiation supersets are money. And if you're working with athletes, you may not need them when you're working with middle and high school age kids because they just need the development. They just need the training and the reps. But you get into college and elite level athletes, this is a nice way to stimulate some further progress. And it's just fun, right? They've been training for a while. Sometimes you just need to do things that are going to get a response, but they're also going to enjoy doing. So a couple notes here. Do you want to develop force or do you want to develop power? So if I'm chasing force, I'm going to go probably heavier On the main exercise, I'm going to do something that's probably a little bit slower, but still explosive for my contrast. Versus if I'm doing something for power, the bar speed's going to be fast, and I'm generally going to do something like band assisted or something that's going to allow them to move very, very quickly to jump up that power output. Another thing that I think is really important is keeping things vector specific. And what I mean by that is, you have to look at the needs and the demands of your athlete, but basketball is very, very vertically dominant, right? Very vertical power dominant. So with my basketball guys, we're going to do a lot of stuff up and down. For a lot of my football guys, it's going to be more horizontal vector. So we're going to do a lot of trap bar variations, a lot of things like broad jumps, tire flips, things of that nature, because you have to have respect for the vectors that your athletes are going to play in. So think, does this guy need more vertical work or do they need more horizontal work? Sometimes it's lateral too. Last but not least, this may be the one that I'm most excited to talk about. And you guys can tell some of the early stuff, not as exciting. You've seen it before, but this stuff is where you can really make some inroads to helping your clients and athletes move better and become better, just better functioning humans overall. So let's talk about movement layering. And movement layering, at least in my opinion, is there to improve movement skill in athletic and or multi-directional movements. So a lot of times we're kind of getting out of the weight room and we're focusing more on movement patterns. It could be acceleration, it could be lateral acceleration, it could be change of direction, but we're using multiple exercises to layer in and teach our athletes how to move more efficiently. So if I can make this work, it's going to be impressive. So I got Kyrie Thomas here, and you're probably going to have to get the sound on that one. But what we have is a 3-step approach here. So we've got a band hip turn, we've got a cone hip turn and shuffle, and we have a reactive hip turn. So all I'm trying to teach Kyrie here is, if you played basketball when 20 years ago, when I was growing up, they taught you to play defense by sliding, putting your foot on the ground, and then pivoting on your foot. And if you did that and you didn't tear your ACL or your meniscus, if nothing else, it was just slow as hell trying to come out of that cut. So a far better way to do this is what Lee Taft describes as a hip turn. You open up your hips, you find an angle, and you aggressively attack the ground with your foot. So here is Kyrie layering this same concept or this same move throughout multiple exercises. So we start with this band hip turn, right? He's just going to hip turn, push. Very simple. Hip turn, push. He's just learning on opening the hips, finding an angle, and then pushing and going. Pretty easy, right? Then we're going to take that same exercise, and now we're going to turn it into a little bit more dynamic movement. All right, so now he's going to shuffle to the cone, hip turn and push. And then he's going to come back, hip turn, push. And then we're going to do it again. Slide, hip turn, push. So very isolated here. We're starting to integrate it a little bit more in this example, right? So we're integrating the pieces. And then finally, hopefully you guys can see this. I've got like the panel over here, but I'm standing right here and I'm going to make it a reactive exercise. So I'm going to point, Kyrie's going to hip turn, and he's going to get to the cone. He's going to square up. I'm going to point, hip turn, and go. You guys can see, I'll pause it so you can hear me. But you can see how we took this very basic exercise, we isolated it, we integrated it, and then we made it reactive. So we just built on this movement skill multiple times in one session. And this is really important because I only had Kyrie for a week. So I had to teach him a lot of stuff. I wanted to give him a lot of tools that he could go home and work on for the rest of the summer. Let's see if I can get all these. Okay, so here's another example, right? So here we're working on change of direction. So in this case, what I've got is, again, the Lee Taft smorgasbord here. I got a fake throw. I got a lateral jump and hold, which we've all done. And then we're going to make it truly reactive at the end. So the fake throw is cool because he's going to shuffle and we're working on creating stiffness, stick. He slides and he sticks. And you can see Dakota here, when we first worked at this, he was struggling. He was all over the place. So let me show you this one more time. Shuffle, stick, stick, finding those angles, being quick and sticking. From there, we're going to make it a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more explosive. And we've all done a lateral jump and hold, right? So in this case, Jay Sean is going to quick stick. So we're working in that lateral vector, right? Training them to change directions and be more athletic when they're playing defense. And then we bring it all together and we make it reactive, we make it competitive so we get the most out of our athletes. So they've done these two exercises to try and build those patterns and layer in these movement skills. And then now they're just going at each other, right? And it's just quickness, change of direction, trying to shake your guy and get away from him. So hopefully that gives you guys some food for thought here. You don't have to take these exact examples, but these are some really cool ways that you can set up some supersets and layer in movements to create better movement skill. So a couple notes on doing this. And this is the way I set it up. You don't have to do it exactly like this, but I think it works really well. Your first exercise is generally there to set position or teach a foundational piece of the movement pattern. It's generally more isolated in nature. Maybe you're trying to help them find a certain position. Maybe you want them to feel a certain angle. So it's very low load, very low momentum. You're just trying to help them understand the positions first. The second piece layers in a controlled element of speed or momentum. So think about Kyrie. He learned that hip turn in the first exercise, and then we started to integrate it into a movement, but it was slow. It was controlled. It was rhythmic. We're just trying to help him better understand the positions that we want. And then if we really want to bring it together and we really truly want to help our athletes get faster, we have to make it reactive. We have to make it competitive. We have to add elements of speed and momentum control because that's how games are played. That's how possessions are won and lost. So you've got to allow them and afford them the opportunity to go head to head with a fellow athlete. And if you can do that, they're probably going to see really good results. In summary, supersets can help you in so many ways, whether it's saving time in your session, which is pretty much universally applicable. All of us are up against time constraints. Private sector, D1, high school, pro, we're all dealing with it. So if you're just using it to save time, that's a win. If you're just using it for the physiological benefits, whether it's building muscle, shedding body fat, getting a bigger pump, whatever, I'm cool with it. You can use that. It's going to help. But I think the real money and where we can really see some positive impact with our clients and with our athletes is using some of these neurology-based supersets where we're really working to clean up their movement patterns, to improve their force or power output, and to help layer in proper movement skills so that they can be better athletes on the court. So with that being said, bottom line, find a way to use supersets in your programs to make them more effective. I think they're an incredibly powerful tool, something that we probably don't give enough respect to, or maybe something that we use very, very frequently, but without giving it a lot of thought. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Obviously, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those. But again, I just truly appreciate you guys taking the time out 8, 9 o'clock on a Friday night to hang out with me. Hopefully you're enjoying a tasty beverage and got a thing or two out of the presentation.
Sensational, brother.
Thanks,
Absolutely
man.
sensational.
Sorry, get through this. Yes.
Question, and
Yeah.
actually, somebody beat me to it.
Okay.
So the role of the band with Kyrie in
Yep.
that hip turn.
Yep. I'll go back to it, right? So the role of the band with Kyrie. So what I'm trying to get him to do here, I want him to reach with his right arm. I want him to open up his right side. That's going to allow him to load his left hip more effectively. Okay. So I'm using his torso to pull him across. It's going to load his left hip. So bop, as soon as he hits the ground, he's got that tension and he's ready to push off it. That's all we're trying to do there is get him to load his left side so he can push off it a little bit more effectively.
I dig it. That's big time.
Thanks, man.
Now, do you do all three of those in the same session?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So kind of the way I'll do it is we'll start with something like this, right? And it's maybe not always done like a true superset. I may not go 1, 2, 3. Sometimes I'll do a couple rounds of this and then we'll move to something like this. And then we'll finish off with the reactive piece at the very end. But yeah, I'll do all three of these, especially number 1, to get them to hit the positions first, then to smooth it out, right? Because here, this is easy, right? This is an NBA athlete. This guy picks this up in a couple reps. But then when you start to add that element of movement and you start to integrate it, now there's timing involved, right? He's got to figure out, okay, where are my feet at? When do I reposition my body? How do I approach the ground? And then that final piece is just that reactive and trying to get him to understand, okay, you've got these movement skills, but a lot of times you put them here, and if they've been taught to pivot, they go back to the pivot, at least initially, right? Like that's ingrained in their brain. So you have to kind of remind them like, oh, that was a great rep. And then second one, great rep. And then the third one, they pivot. And you have to say, and you have to remind them, and they know, right? But just giving them that feedback. So I'll absolutely use all three of these in a session. It's not always as a pure superset or a pure triset, however you want to think about it. But I'll use all three of these to layer and build that movement skill up to a point where we can do something reactive at the end.
Another good question is how in the potentiation, how much time do you take between the movement and the explosive exercise?
Oh, man. I mean, what does the research tell me and what do I actually do?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the research will tell you need at least like 4 to 5 minutes, right? Like you need 4 to 5 minutes between both, and you allow that full nervous system recovery and full transparency. Generally, I'm going to take about 1.5 to 2 minutes. If I'm doing a strength and a power, I'll do 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes in between the strength and the power, and then I'll go 3 and 4 between the power. And part of that is just like, look, I understand the science, but practical world too, right? Like you're taking more than like 90 minutes with an athlete. I don't care. Even if you have time to do it, a lot of them don't want to be there that long. So I think you get 80 to 90% of the benefit. Maybe it's not 100%, but you get more benefit than just doing it by itself. And again, from a practical perspective, it just works a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, that's the hardest part with it, right? Is
Right.
having them to understand that the rest pause is the most important part.
Yes. Yes. And part of that's education too, right? You got to educate them like, look, in the block before this, and this is the example I'll use, like in the block before this, it's about pace, right? Like we're working on some general conditioning. We're working on some connective tissue strength. So we got to work fast. But now we're training your nervous system. So we're shifting gears. And yeah, the muscles may feel recovered. The heart may feel recovered, but the nervous system and the brain aren't yet. And this is the driver. So we got to give this time to recover so we get maximum output when we do this stuff.
Yeah, because that's what has to happen has to happen.
Right. Right. Yeah, you can't shortchange it. And so what I would rather do is if I do have somebody that has this tendency to not wait, I'll just do less volume, right? If it would normally be 5 rounds of this and they don't want to take that time, hey man, I'll take 3 really good sets. Let's do 3 really good supersets of this. Let's do it the right way. And then we can go from there.
All right, buddy. Let me get you out of here with this one because this one's a good question. This
Okay.
one actually might be a rabbit hole question.
Oh, okay.
What are the benefits of increasing central fatigue as opposed to peripheral fatigue, from a physiological standpoint?
So I think of this as this is like your old school GPP, right? Like you got the athlete that walks in and the resting heart rate 76. Like if you do 3 sets consecutive of squats with that athlete, like they're done. Like you're not getting anything else out of them out of that. So that's where I feel like I can increase work capacity without just smashing one muscle group and they're glycolytic and they're like in a corner the rest of the workout, right? So that's the way I think about it. It's more of like a general increasing of work capacity. I mean, I think the same thing even for like fat loss clients. And I don't know like all of the people obviously on this call because like last time I checked, there were like 1,400. So I'm sure there's a lot of different demographics there. But like for a fat loss client, a lot of times people think fat loss, oh, you have to do glycolytics. Well, absolutely not. Like a lot of fat loss clients need like that aerobic system to start, right? They're doing like 2 sets of 8 and they're smashed at the end of a session because they have no work capacity. So that's like such a big piece for me. Like that's where I'm more focused on, hey, let's just get some central activity going. Let's get your heart in better shape, your cardiovascular system in better shape, your respiratory system in better shape. So that when we do want to crank things up, we've got the central ability to recover in between sets. And that's what you never hear people talk about, right? It's all about the training, but nobody talks about the recovery side. And that's what those rest periods are so important for. But you got to have the aerobic system underneath you that underpins it, that allows that recovery.
And twofold, right, bud? Because it's not just exercise to exercise, but being able to recover and come in the next day and do something.
Yeah. Yeah. See, and that's such a great point, because too often we think, oh, this is my Monday workout, with no thought processes to, okay, what are you doing Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday? And how does that Monday workout impact Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Because I mean, we can all go in and crush it on Monday, but what kind of shape are we rolling in on Tuesday? Very, very tough question to answer, but yeah. And that's where you can't have this short-sighted approach to exercise. You always have to be thinking about, how does this impact not just today, but the rest of the training week as a whole?
Yeah. And then how that week affects the month, and the month affects the year. And
Sure.
there's so many people like to think that it's like all about the sets and reps, but it's, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's all
I
about the years and the grinding on you.
And I think the longer you do this too, the more you don't program a session, you program based on like a series of sessions, right? Like it's just easier for you to come back and think about, okay, if I'm doing this on Monday, what do I have to do on Tuesday to be ready for Wednesday? Like that's the way I think. The longer you do this, the more you think like that, because you just know there's a cost. There's a cost to putting in a killer day on Monday, and maybe you can recover from it. Maybe you're good enough on Tuesday. Hey, I know that that's going to happen. So we're going to do some aerobic stuff. We're going to do some mobility stuff. We're going to flush you out. We're going to make sure that Wednesday we come back. And then, hey, maybe Wednesday we're not going to crush it, but we're going to go moderate. And then Thursday we're going to come in and we're going to go lighter, and we're going to go mobility, because we know Friday we're going hard again. So I think that's something, the longer you do this, the easier it is to not just get caught up and like look at each individual day. You can kind of 30,000 foot view. How do I plan a training week and a month? And how do all these things kind of fit together?
Well, and even more so too, right? The ability to look at the day and say, uh-oh, what I did yesterday
Yeah.
means I got to mix up today a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. Or just how many programs did you write when you were young, and you just think, oh yeah, this is it. And then you go do that workout and you're like, oh, that was it. That was it, boy. But I don't have much for tomorrow. So it's just, man, it's reps. It's like people always ask, like, what do I need to do to get better? Like, man, you need reps, coaching reps, programming reps. You can't shortchange that. You can absorb and regurgitate all the knowledge, but the reps you can't fake.
No doubt, man. Mike, awesome stuff, bro. Truly appreciate you spending the time with us, man. This was great. And
Thank you.
it's great to see you, dude. I'm stoked
You
you're
too,
doing
man.
awesome, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody coming on.
Yeah, man. And listen, guys, before we bounce, just a couple of housekeeping things. We are really close to 50,000. Let's see if we can get there tonight. I would love for Drake to wake me up tomorrow with a text message or a phone call that says, bro, we did it. We're right there. So, don't forget, to hop over to the GoFundMe. If there's anything that you can contribute, we would be exceptionally grateful for whatever you can do. And on top of that, guys, I got to give a quick shout out to our friends down at Sorinex. The off-grid rack that they just put together for the next couple weeks.
Yeah,
Drake?
2 weeks.
The next 2 weeks. For each one of those that they sell, the money's going into the GoFundMe for this cause. So, if you're looking for something for an at-home gym, which we all probably need right about now, as I sit in my kitchen, laundry room, office, and weight room, that's all one room that's doing all the same things. We could all use a place to hang a bar and get a good lift in. So hop over, check them out, guys. And, before we leave, again, make sure that you guys, when you do see the 26 companies that are helping out, please make sure the next time you see them that you say thank you. And, guys, what the people that have put this together, what Matt and Ben and Drake have done with all this work, if you've never put an event together, you don't understand how much work that they've gone through, let alone trying to do it in 10 days, which I can't fathom. And I've done it for 10 years. So cheers to you guys. Thank you so much. This was absolutely a blast. And for all y'all that spent your Friday night looking at old Graybeard at the end of these talks, I can't thank you enough. Cheers, guys. Thanks for your contributions, and we look forward to being part of this again. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. That was amazing. Everybody, I just want to close with another thanks to all the speakers, all three of them today, just to let everybody know today's was broadcast as well on YouTube, and we will have links. We'll send those out to everybody in the next couple of days. I don't want to email everybody too much. I think you'll get sick of it pretty quickly. But tomorrow's session is going to be massive, basically a full day. Pop in when you can. Again, we're gonna basically send you links to all of these presentations after the fact. So don't sweat if you have to drop out and eat or take care of your kids or do what you have to do. That's not a big deal. Please don't feel like you have to sit in. We want to provide as much information as we can, but make it digestible at the same time, so we understand that you have things to do. Trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting, but again, just thanks to everybody who's donated so far. This has just gone way beyond anything we had ever anticipated. When Drake suggested $30,000 as or I think he actually suggested 50,000 for a goal, and I said there's no way, and I said, well, let's do something in between, because I said maybe 25, and we landed on 30. Yeah, we're way past that now, and I think that's a testament to what a strong community we have. And obviously the lineup of speakers that we have, and then this list of companies that have contributed, they're all doing their part and really showing that they care about the community that we have here in strength and conditioning. Trying to think if there's anything else, Drake, that you wanted to add.
No, just thank you to the companies and the people that have donated to the cause. I mean, we're getting close to $50,000 a night still. That's pretty amazing, guys. I mean, that's really what this is about, is donating to the COVID-19 cause. So thank you guys again for doing that.
Yeah, and anybody who's curious about CEUs and things like that, as I said, we're going to make all this stuff available. You'll be getting more information about certificates and things like that in the next couple of weeks. It won't be long. We just have to get all of our stuff in order. Like I said, there's over 4,000 people signed up for the next 4 sessions. So it's going to be a big group. But again, if you have questions about kind of the event, anything that I can help you with, please feel free to reach out. I've got emailed with a lot of you, probably not all of you, but a few hundred at least. It's ben@hawkindynamics.com. And yeah, this is awesome. This is just the start. We have 3 more sessions, and actually technically 4. Next week there's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be broken up into 2 different sessions. But yeah, we're really excited about this. I think everything went fairly smoothly tonight. I was a little worried about losing audio at one point. My computer was yelling at me, but we managed to stick around. So once again, we're going to close it out now, but just wanted to thank everybody one last time. If you can donate, we really appreciate it. Everybody's in the same situation right now. We're, as a small business, we understand exactly what the uncertainty is like, and we're just trying to help when we can, and how we can, for a really good cause. Last thing I'll say, this has been a team effort. A lot of people have said things about how quickly we put this together, but I think it really is a testament to the power of when you work with others and are willing to give even just a little bit, because it really just shows. I mean, this whole thing came together, but it was just such an awesome example of a team putting something together, everybody doing something that they had knowledge of, experience with, and it's really amazing to see how it's turned out. And we hope this is the first of many. So I think, Drake, if you wanted to close it out with anything else, we can wrap it up.
I think I'm good. Just thank you guys, and look forward to chatting with you tomorrow too.
Right on. Have a good night, everybody.
See you guys.
Or morning if you're in Australia. So thanks a lot. We'll be seeing you soon. Take care.